Chapter 206. Old man, what you did just now was a 44 beat. Hearing Huaishi's voice, Elder Luo's expression became more and more strange. He wondered if he had broken this guy's skull. But then he saw Huaishi get up excitedly. The knife and axe appeared in his hands as he explained to Elder Luo. Look, it's 44 beats. The axe chopped down, making a loud sound. Strong. The sacrificial knife swung horizontally. Weak. Then, the spear of compassion stabbed forward. Second strong. Finally, the sacrificial knife's attack ended. Weak. Strong, weak, second strong, weak, or slightly changed. But no matter what, it was a perfect 44 beats. What's that? Elder Luo was completely confused. In music, time can be divided into basic units. Each unit is called a beat, and the time value of a beat is represented by the time value of a note. Huaishi was so excited that she danced around as she explained, the time value of a beat can be a quarter note, which means that a quarter note is a beat, a half note is a beat, or an eighth note is also fine. Elder Luo felt like a herd of cows was flying in front of him. He couldn't understand it no matter how hard he tried. He frowned unhappily. Don't play with those fancy words. He swung his mace and closed in on Huaishi step by step. In an instant, Huaishi retreated again. He looked more and more surprised. Strong, weak, this is 24 beats. Wait, I understand. Let me think about it. Think about it. He seemed to have understood something, but Elder Luo couldn't understand what it was. He felt that he was excited, as if he had finally gotten the answer after being puzzled for a long time. He was so happy that he was almost flying. Huaishi muttered notes and terms that no one could understand as he spun around in the inner field. In the end, he even snapped his fingers enthusiastically. Strong, weak, weak, strong. Strong, weak, weak, weak. Second strong, weak, weak, weak. Strong, 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 strong. In the end, he suddenly turned around and smiled confidently. I understand. Changes, right? In his hands, the saber and axe swung freely. That low sound constantly changed, combining into a completely different melody. Sometimes it was strong, sometimes it was weak, sometimes it was fast, sometimes it was slow. At this moment, he was so excited that he couldn't restrain himself. He had finally extricated himself from the misconceptions he had all along and returned to the right path. The satisfaction it brought was simply indescribable. The so-called changes were not passive or active adaptations, but the embodiment of the rhythm of the struggle. The moment of the duel was stretched infinitely, divided into countless time periods, and filled in with different rhythms as he pleased. In the end, he guided the silent melody to reach the climax. This was no different from performing. In his imagination, a steel pendulum was rapidly swinging, producing a rhythmic sound that constantly changed with his movements. Damn, why did we drag this out for so many days when a metronome could have solved the problem? Even those who didn't understand music had probably seen that thing before. It was a counterweight connected to a vertical steel pendulum. Once it was started, it would swing to both sides rhythmically. Any beginner would love this kind of tool. It would help them quickly grasp the changes in the rhythm. At this moment, the appearance of this concept, to Huaishi, who was so confused that he couldn't find any clues, was like a ray of light in a sea of bitterness. It allowed him to finally find a direction and understand the theory that Elder Luo had violently instilled in him. He was enlightened. Amidst his joy, he finally welcomed the legendary epiphany. Isn't this the rhythm? Huaishi shook his head and sighed. You should have said so earlier. I'm the best at setting the rhythm. As he spoke, he turned around and stared at the old man not too far away. Out of nowhere, he asked, speaking of which, old man, do you like rock and roll? HM? Elder Luo didn't understand. Look, I'll demonstrate for you. duh, duh. Weisher muttered softly. The tip of his foot tapped the ground lightly, as if he were beating the surface of a drum. A clear, crisp sound emanated from beneath his feet, wrapping around everyone's ears as origin substance began to ripple through the air. As the youth spread out his arms, even the blade began to tremble slightly under the youth's low muttering, "I am the Haddo, and the moke in you, Reyes. I am the shadow, and also the smoke in your eyes." As such, the sound of an electric guitar suddenly began to ring out in his mind. Weisher slowly raised his head, accompanied by a soundless cry. He softly muttered, "I am the ghost that is in the light. I am a ghost in the dark night." In that instant, the light of a mountain ghost lit up in the youth's eyes. He walked forward step by step. The saber and axe suddenly vibrated. It was obviously silent, but in a trance it was as if a thunderous melody had burst forth. A whistling sound burst forth from the blade of the axe, whistling towards the old man, who was already close at hand. The hoarse chanting began to echo in everyone's ears. Boom-lay, boom-lay, boom. The blade of the axe fell and was blocked. However, this time, Weisher's movements were extremely fast. He raised his hand and slapped 68 times. Strong, weak, weak. Next strong, weak, weak. As the blade of the axe suddenly disappeared from his hand, the sacrificial knife appeared and swept towards Elder Luo's neck. When the spiked club was raised, the blade of the sacrificial knife mysteriously disappeared and turned into the blade of the axe to block the attack. Meanwhile, the sacrificial knife shot out from Weisher's left hand and pierced towards Elder Luo's heart. Boom-lay, boom-lay, boom. Bang! Elder Luo's movements paused for a moment. He didn't suppress Weisher like he usually did. Instead, he was suppressed by Weisher's rhythm. Just as he took a step back and was about to charge up his strength and launch a fierce attack, he saw a spear appear in Weisher's hand at an unknown time. It whistled through the air and pierced towards Elder Luo's neck. The spear collided with the steel, followed by a cold light from the dagger. The sharp sound intertwined and blended into the rhythm. As Weisher hummed, it turned into a real melody. This was the diamond yes played by the steel, the power of rock and roll. As Weisher hummed hoarsely, his movements became faster and faster. The thunder in the void seemed to be integrated into the blade of the axe, bursting out with his slashing and piercing. His strength soared. At that moment, Elder Luo's movements paused without warning. He instantly seized the gap in Weisher's rhythm and attacked. The attack missed. Elder Luo was stunned. Immediately, he felt the rhythm change again. That's right, the DJ changed the song. The impassioned rock and roll turned into a low, rumbling sound of the piano. Weisher fell from the air and twisted his waist. The sacrificial knife swept towards Elder Luo's neck from his hand. Today, I'll show you the Bach knife technique that comes with my level 12 cello. The originally slow rhythm quickly accelerated. In Weisher's imagination, the height of the counterweight on the metronome kept decreasing. The beat value changed and instantly soared to 208 beats per minute. This was a stormy, unaccompanied cello suite. Unless one could read Weisher's mind and read the music score in his heart, no one could predict how his rhythm would change, and whether the next attack would be as fast as thunder or insidious and tricky. Even if there was still no way to win, at least there was a back and forth. This time, he finally didn't have to sullenly take a beating. 38 beats, 14 beats, double beats, single beats. Weisher was so excited that he began to crazily change the song. After a short improvisation, the melody quickly became strange and impassioned. In his hand, the spear of compassion was like a venomous snake. It drew an arc in the air and pierced towards Elder Luo's throat. Eat my Paganini puncture. Hell changed. In the intense changes of Capriccio, the sinister style changed again and became majestic. The spear suddenly dissipated under the beating of the mace. Instead, Weisher had been accumulating power for a long time and suddenly launched a counterattack. Haydn's axe. In just a few minutes, from Bach to Beethoven, then to Haydn, Brahms, and Schumann, he almost ruined all the classical musicians. He felt refreshed. Just as the impassioned melody climbed to the peak with the intense rhythm, new changes appeared on the title page of the Book of Destiny in Weisher's consciousness. The Theravada Tantric dual blade technique, Roman dagger combat, old Judgment House's sword technique, and other skills that had been forcefully flattened by Elder Luo and could be said to have been abolished completely disappeared. What replaced it was a line of faint gray words that quickly emerged from nothingness. It condensed and formed in an instant as if it was pulled by the highest level of the legendary cello performance. It soared crazily. Sword technique. Performance. Level 10. Weisher was stunned at first, then he was immediately ecstatic. The skills that he comprehended were recognized by the Book of Destiny, and they were upgraded to such a terrifying level in an instant. In addition to the various combat skills that turned into experience points, the biggest reason was that he had broken through to level 12 cello performance, even if it seemed to be in opposite directions. But the essence of the two was exactly the same. They were both performances, but the tools used were different. With the foundation broken, Weisher's skills finally ushered in a new qualitative change in the hellish ravage. But this ecstasy didn't last long. Then he felt the old man's shadow suddenly enlarged. In a flash, he broke through the encirclement and was close at hand. Danger! Weisher subconsciously defended. Then he saw the old man's mouth full of yellow teeth, and his voice was like thunder. It was the lion's roar. I eat meat every day, but I don't get fat. My body is great. In the old man's roaring singing, the rough folk song from Nanzhao rushed into the cello melody violently, stirring all the rhythm into a mess. It disrupted Weisher's rhythm and messed up the movements of his hands. A flaw. Weisher suddenly shook, flew backward, and smashed into the wall. No way. The young man raised his head sluggishly and spat out a mouthful of old blood. You can do this. My new move is still hot. How can it be defeated in the hands of Nanzhao's folk song? Sure enough, the old saying doesn't lie. Classic is not as good as rock, and rock is not as popular. Even if it's popular, there's an invincible opponent. Even if it's a brainwashing song, once it's mixed with Nanzhao's folk song, it's over. No matter how strong the love is, it can't be compared to the explosive coquettishness of the old driver. Weisher, in the midst of shock and regret, was utterly defeated. As Weisher lost the ability to respond, Elder Luo didn't chase after him this time. Instead, he stood in place and seemed to be bored as he threw the already bent and broken mace to the side. After falling to the ground, the twisted mace completely fell apart. He had completed his mission. Although it's still a bit rough, you've passed this level. He patted the dust on his hands, shook his head, and said, Also, if you like to sing, put on your own headphones and play it yourself. Don't stupidly hum it out for others to hear. Come early tomorrow. Time is a bit tight. I'll finish the class before the rookie competition. Weisher was stunned. First, it was inconceivable. He couldn't believe that he had passed this level. Then he was confused. Were there any more classes? The basics of barehanded combat, the structure and posture of weapons, the grasp of timing, and the change of rhythm. These basic classes could be said to have been finished, according to the muscular old man's style of rudely kicking people through the door and sending the rest to self-study. Was there anything else to be taught? You're the kind of guy who doesn't have any growth potential. Elder Luo sat on the chair and looked at his stunned face. It should be said that you don't really love the things I teach. After all, these things are not your goal, right? wasn't a harsh reprimand, and he didn't expect better from him. As early as the first day Weisher came here, he understood that this guy didn't treat the things here as a lifelong pursuit from the bottom of his heart. There were many kinds of love in this world, and there were also different degrees of love. Weisher's love for fighting skills was at best stronger than the love for playing games. Strictly speaking, it was just a part of his job. While conscientiously fulfilling his duty, he chose to strive for perfection. But what did it matter? In the final analysis, wasn't what he taught the skills of killing people. He couldn't create peace. He just needed to use weapons on the ground. Compared with real power, it was insignificant. It wasn't worth mentioning. There were countless things in this world that were more meaningful than these. They could make the world better and gain more respect from people. Even the future of cooking barbecued pork was much brighter than this. A righteous person should scoff at this. They should treat it in this way of learning and using for the time being. If they used it as a means, they had to be prepared that they couldn't become the strongest in their lifetime. However, if they only used it as a means, they had more choices than killing people in their lifetime. In the silence, Elder Luo quietly gazed at the surroundings of the training ground. The collection of weapons that covered almost all the fighting methods in the world, whether it was swords, spears, swords, halberds, claw hooks, fist blades, from the increasingly rare axes to the marquette that was only popular among some American warriors. There was almost everything. Countless iron and stone gathered together, forming a terrifying scale that was almost impossible for ordinary people to learn in their lifetime. Didn't you say that you want to do whatever you want? He slowly withdrew his gaze and looked at Weisher in front of him. In that case, the more means the better, right? Chapter 207. The next day, in the afternoon, in the training field that was in a mess, Weisher squatted on the ground and lowered his head to look at the weapons that were randomly piled up on the ground. He was dazzled. What's this? Weisher picked up half of a steel statue that resembled a human figure. A human face was vaguely smashed on the back of the statue. Oh, that was a sublimator who was obsessed with reading wuxia novels. He felt that there was nothing in the world that couldn't be conquered. He made himself a one-legged bronze statue and wanted to challenge the heroes. In the end, I pressed him against the bronze statue and beat him to death. I haven't cleaned it up for a long time. This place is covered in dust. Elder Luo picked up a handkerchief and wiped the dust on the face of the person. He could vaguely see the frightened expression on the face. The old man's expression became even more carefree. That guy called Sanwon. He can't be beaten, but his words are nice. If I didn't beat him to death back then, he could still say a few nice words. What about this? Weisher turned his hand and picked up a chain. There was a thick scripture hanging on the chain. It was wrapped in steel and was extremely heavy. It was almost like a meteor hammer. I met a missionary at the border. I picked this up after he was killed. What about this? Weisher was confused. He picked up a broken model. It looked like a road roller, and it was still stained with blood. Elder Luo raised his eyes and glanced at it. Oh, that was when I was young. I passed by the big library and met a few guys who didn't read properly and were always nitpicking. They asked me what I couldn't do when I was proficient in weapons. I randomly picked up something and killed them all. As he spoke, he rubbed a mouthful of protein powder and mixed it with protein powder. He sighed leisurely. Since then, no one dared to ask me what I couldn't do. I really miss it. Weisher was dumbfounded. I have to learn this. Can you finish learning it? Elder Luo sneered and asked in return. Moreover, do you need to specially put an effort to learn these toys? He was very clear about Weisher's ability. In terms of talent, it could be said that he was at the level of an elite. If he worked hard, he could be considered 1 in 100 and could not be considered outstanding. However, there was one good thing about it. His strange imagination and ideas were endless, and he was actually able to create the sword and sword technique, performance technique, out of nothing. This could make up for the deficiency of his talent for the time being. The future could be looked forward to. However, the most important thing was that his comprehension ability was fatally lacking. It wasn't that he wasn't suitable for this job. 99% of the people in this world didn't need such a mysterious thing like comprehension, let alone talent. In this day and age, the division of labor was so detailed that there was no need for one person to shoulder all the responsibilities. After being assigned to the tail, all that was needed was grinding. With Weischer's current speed, he would probably be able to catch up with him 10 years ago in 40 years, right? However, if he wanted to take another step forward, it would be impossible. However, the next step was meaningless to him. To him, it was fine as long as it was enough. This was the least of the problems for the muscular old man. Not to mention other things, if it was just some skills that could be comprehended after some practice, it would be enough. As he spoke, the old man put down the teapot and picked up an iron whip from the ground. He waved it twice, setting off bursts of thunder that broke through the air. All the weapons buzzed and vibrated. Oh, resonance! Awesome! Weischer clapped his hands calmly. He had successfully destroyed the pretentious nature of the worship of thousands of weapons. Elder Luo couldn't help but want to whip this bastard to death. Seeing that the old man's expression didn't look good, Weischer quickly shut his mouth and didn't dare to speak anymore. You've already mastered the basic posture and rhythm changes. It can be said that you can learn everything else by yourself. What I can do is just to speed up the process of your adaptation. As he spoke, the old man demonstrated to Weischer a few offensive and defensive postures that were commonly used with iron whips. With a flick of his wrist, he took out a short knife and made a few slashes to show Weischer the trick and essence of it. The two were almost polar opposites. However, in his hands, it was indescribably harmonious and unified. Then, the old man changed to the octagonal sword, spear, sickle, double saber, flail, and other weapons. He briefly demonstrated each of them. It was simple and straightforward, allowing Weischer to clearly see the changes and similarities. Can you see it? Elder Luo casually threw a round shield aside and picked up a short spear. He casually waved it and turned back to say, "There are so many weapons in this world. However, in the end, there are only so many ways to use them. Even if there are so many strange moves, they don't have any practical value. If it's divided by distance, it can be divided into long, medium, and short. If it's divided by weight, it can be divided into light, medium, and medium. If it's divided by style, it's even simpler. Attack, defense, sneak attack, and so on. If it's divided by style, it's even simpler. It can be divided into attack, defense, sneak attack, and so on. If it's explained in detail, it can be about a few thousand words. However, on the other hand, isn't it only a few thousand words that are really useful? The rest is nothing more than the combination of a few techniques: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. After hearing Elder Luo's brief explanation, Weischer vaguely understood something. He was suddenly overjoyed. "I want to learn this. That's really awesome." If he learned this, there was no weapon in the world that he couldn't use. "No, I won't teach you these. I've given you the method. If you want to learn it, you can figure it out yourself." Elder Luo poured a bucket of cold water on him. "Time is short. Since you want to seek for practical results, you can naturally ignore it. I won't teach you anything that you can learn by yourself. I've already given you the key to the house. I've said so much just to show you the door. This is all I can do. I've only received so little money from you. Do you want me to imitate the old grandpa in the novel and give you a daughter after imparting a few hundred years' worth of skills to you? That's not impossible. Huaishir really wanted to say that. However, even if he was given a few hundred guts, he wouldn't dare to say it in front of the old man. Instead, he put on a sincere and upright face. Old man, you think too much. Huaishir, just want to strengthen my body every day. I don't care about women very much. If he made the old man anxious, he might not be able to survive until the end of the class, let alone the class. However, Luo Xian, who was knitting next to him, heard it. She tied up her hair and supported her chin with her elbow. She fanned the flames with a smile. I don't mind. It depends on whether you're willing to do it or not. Huaishir was frightened. However, the old man just glanced at her and slowly shook his head. You're still young. You can say this kind of words when you're a few years older. Luo Xian shook her head and smiled at Huaishir. Father is teasing you. Don't be afraid. Huaishir smiled stiffly. Until now, he still hadn't woken up from the terrible chill of the premonition of death. When the old man glanced at him just now, he felt that he was about to die. He couldn't move. If this was a joke, he would pick up the knife on the ground and swallow it whole. Seeing Elder Luo looking at him with a simple and honest smile, he hurriedly squeezed out a flattering smile, full of flattery. Elder Luo glanced at his cowardly face and shook his head in disdain. It's a pity. If you agreed, just now, I might have seriously considered it. Think about which thing on the ground you want to use to hammer me to death. Huaishir's face twitched. He let him pretend. When the old man finished his act, he said, Then what are we going to teach today? I'm going to teach you something at the bottom of the box. Elder Luo said calmly. Ever since I've taught my students before the end of the class, I've always given them something special, so that others won't say that I'm stingy. However, you're more difficult to deal with than the others. I've never been too sure about what to teach you. Huaishir was stunned. He put on a magnanimous look and said, Just teach me anything. Anyway, he couldn't go back on what he taught. Just by looking at the beginner drummer and Yu Bu, he knew that this old man had a lot of treasures. Since he said that it was at the bottom of the box, it naturally wouldn't be ordinary. Come on. Elder Luo glanced at Huaishir and sneered, but he didn't say anything. He had already said that Huaishir didn't have any growth. It wasn't that he didn't work hard, but this guy's mind wasn't pure. Just by looking at his sword skills, it was obvious. There were axes, short knives, long spears, not to mention all kinds of guns that he was good at. It was simply too messy. On the bright side, it was called learning from others' strong points. On the other hand, it was bad that he wasn't good at anything. In his heart, he wanted to learn everything, but in reality, it wasn't impossible for him to learn anything. It didn't matter if he had more or less. It was fine if he had it, but it was fine if he didn't have it. On the surface, he was courageous, but in his bones, it could be said that he was muddling along. He had a lot of unique skills in his hands, but instead of teaching this guy half a bucket of kung fu and letting him wander around and lose face, it was better to teach him something else. But what to teach was giving the old man a headache. If it wasn't for yesterday's performance that made the old man think highly of him and determined that he wasn't rotten wood that couldn't be carved, there wouldn't be this lesson today. A capable person who learned more and used more was called learning from others' strong points. A person who didn't have the ability and was greedy could only be called a bear who was greedy. If you didn't have the talent, why did you blindly pretend to be a big shot? Today, Huaishir could be considered to have given the old man a perfect score. He made the old man admit his ability for the time being. Since he couldn't be specialized, it was good to be versatile. In the end, weapons are just tools. If you really want to use them well, one is enough. There's no need to be as fancy as you. But since you like to be fancy, it's not like there's no way. Elder Luo said slowly, I know you've learned the Theravada Tantra's multi-blade style, but it's meaningless to other ascendants. It's just the same after reaching the end. Besides, even if you have hands all over your body and become the 1,000-hand bodhisattva, in the end, you still have to use one to chop people, right? If you ask me, 3 or 4 arms are redundant and cumbersome. 1 arm is too little, so 2 arms are just right. In front of Huaishur, he picked up a long spear, a one-handed axe, and a short knife from the ground. They just happened to be the few tools that Huaishur usually used. Finally, he thought for a while and pulled a rope over. Huaishur was stunned for a long time. Was the old man custom-made for him? Xiaoxian, go out for a while. Elder Luo turned around and instructed, according to the rules, only the students can learn this part. Luo Xian didn't say anything. She stood up and left with a smile. She even patted him on the shoulder to show her encouragement. Anyway, for her, no matter how profound and obscure something was, she would be able to understand it after looking at it for a while. The old man asked her to go out just to show his attitude to the student as a teacher. Otherwise, it wouldn't be considered as a trump card. Seeing Elder Luo pick up the long spear and the axe, Huaishur suddenly understood something. Is he teaching me about left and right interfighting? That kind of thing isn't difficult. You can go back and think about it. The old man picked up the remote control and pressed it. A steel pile rose in front of Huaishur. It looked like a human figure. It seemed to be a demonstration. After Huaishur sat down attentively, the old man reminded him, what I'm going to teach you today is actually not difficult. It's just a little cumbersome. You'd better watch it carefully later. As he spoke, he picked up the long spear on the ground with the tip of his foot and inserted it into the ground beside him. He continued to say, since you're holding 2 weapons, you can't be satisfied with the result of 1 + 1 = 2. Otherwise, if you use a weapon well, you can naturally exert 30 or even 10% of your strength. Distracting yourself will only do more harm than good, unless you can achieve the effect of 1 + 1 = 2, just like this. At that moment, the old man's figure flashed in front of the iron pile. Immediately after, a loud explosion was heard. After the hurricane and the broken iron swept over, Huaishur was still stunned in place. Not only was he awed by the deafening, sharp whistling sound, but he was also shocked by the scene in front of him. After one blow, there were 3 slash marks on the iron pile, the axe, the knife, and the spear. Then, the iron pile fell apart. That was achieved with an incredible technique. It was more than 10 times more destructive than a simple slash. After the broken pieces, the old man threw away the red-hot knife and axe in his hand. He slowly turned his head and said, "This is what you'll learn in the next few days. You can say that it's a unique skill that is tailor-made for you. You don't need to be proficient in it or even master it. Now, you only need to use it rigidly, and you'll be able to exert a miraculous effect. You can call it Xiang Dragon." Chapter 208. 2 days later, the sound of steel colliding could still be heard in the inner room of the gym. The sharp sound echoed inside from morning to night. Even the intense singing in the gym could not cover it up. Now, it finally came to an end and fell into a long silence. The door opened a little with the faint sound of footsteps. A dirty hand stretched out from inside, grabbed the meal tray at the door, and pulled it in. Soon, the sound of chewing came from behind the door. It was like a hungry beast chewing the bones and separating the flesh. It was a takeout that had been completely cold, but the sound was as sweet as a delicacy. Soon, the door opened again, and the meal tray was put out. There was nothing left. Elder Luo glanced at it. Naturally, the gym staff walked over and picked up the meal tray to clean it up. After a short rest, The sound of steel colliding burst out again. It's been 2 days. Luo Xian glanced at it and lowered her head to continue knitting the oversized sweater for her father. She said casually, "Father, isn't it too difficult to teach him this kind of thing? When I was 14 years old, I didn't dare to say that I could learn it. It's only interesting when it's a little difficult." Elder Luo mixed the protein powder with carrot juice and said casually, "It's good if he can learn it, but it's not my fault if he can't learn it, right? It's good to let him suffer for a few more days. Otherwise, it'll be a loss to teach him so much for 100,000 yuan. Bad boy." The daughter looked up at her father and shook her head. "Are you so sure that he won't give up? Some young people nowadays look like they're smiling, but they're cursing in their hearts. That kid is different because he's more difficult to deal with." Elder Luo smacked his lips and recalled the taste of the carrot juice. "He looks bright and doesn't care about anything, but he's not like that at all. Sometimes he's as gentle as a domestic dog, but when he holds a sword, he's as fierce as a wild dog. It's completely incomprehensible. Even if he's not interested, as long as you put good things in front of him, he won't give up. Even if he knows it's bait, he'll swallow the meat and the hook into his stomach and tear the line." Luo Xian listened, and the knitting needle in her hand stopped. "It sounds good. Yes." Elder Luo put down the teapot in his hand. "Sometimes I even feel lucky that he doesn't have your talent. Otherwise, I would have killed him here. Isn't such a person good?" "It might be good, but it's not good for this world," the old man said calmly. "People like him. Even if he doesn't learn these things to kill people, he will only kill more people in the future, thousands of times more than people like us. It would be great if he was the kind of person who was cold and vicious by nature. He could disregard the lives of others and himself. If he killed someone, then he killed them. If he died, then he died. He was as light as a feather. However, he knew what death was, and he knew the value of life more than anyone else. Therefore, when he held a sword, he was colder and crueler than ordinary people. Even if he might regret it, hate it, and repent, he would never stop. Not even 100,000 Mount Tai could stop him. Even if he looks like a pretty boy now, he will definitely be a disaster in the future." Luo Xian listened and thought for a while. She couldn't help but laugh. "I always feel like Father wants to eradicate a disaster. But even if he is a disaster in the future, what does this have to do with me, a gym owner?" Elder Luo leisurely crossed his legs and continued to make the protein powder. "He pays, I teach. Even if more people die, it has nothing to do with me." He listened to the bitter and persistent sounds of the sword in the inner room, basked in the afternoon sun, and enjoyed the joy of torturing people. He took 2 mouthfuls of his daughter's special protein powder. It was another beautiful day. Who cares about the flood in the future? Under the gentle afternoon sun, in the lobby on the first floor of the Jinling branch of the Astronomical Society, Ai Qing saw the man sitting on the sofa and reading the newspaper. After many years, he didn't look as rough as before. Now, he was wearing a decent suit with a gentle smile on his face. When he saw Ai Qing finally appear, he took off his glasses, closed the newspaper, and waved at her. "It looks like you have something to do." Chai Fei glanced at him and knew the identity of the visitor. "Do you need me to help you take the afternoon off?" "No need, you go up first, I'll come later." Ai Qing replied, faintly. She moved her wheelchair to the front of the sofa and looked at the smiling face that didn't hide her joy. After a long time, she sighed softly. "Brother Enya, long time no see. After hearing Xiao Yan's words, I thought you would kick me out. I was almost fooled by him." The man named Enya sat forward a little and looked at her cheeks. After a long time, he ruffled her hair without hesitation. When he saw Ai Qing's angry face, he couldn't help but laugh. "You've really lost weight. Ai Ching calmly smoothed her hair and asked, "Other than other people's weight, what else can you think of?" Enya smiled awkwardly and shrugged. "I wanted to ask you if you met someone you like, but then I thought that you might scold me even more, so I didn't dare to ask." Ai Ching shook her head, but didn't retort. In the Big Een family, since her parents died, the one who had been taking care of her was her cousin, who was regarded as the future head of the family. If it weren't for Enya, she probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to study in London, let alone other things. Now that she saw her cousin who took care of her, it would be a lie to say that she was unhappy. But after so many years, she had changed from a little girl to an inspector of the Astronomy Society, and his achievements were even more amazing. It was said that a few days ago, he had broken through the 3rd stage at the border and stepped into the 4th stage, star antimony. Such a person was enough to support a family in the present. Presumably, after the old Een master passed away, he would be the head of the Een family. Their identities were completely different from the past. Even though Enya took care of her, now he was going to represent the Een family. After a short silence, she didn't want to continue in this awkward atmosphere, so she directly asked, "Big brother, why did you come to me this time? Don't you want to eat some fruit first? When I came back from the border, I specially brought it for you. Try it. It tastes very good." Enya stretched out his hand and picked up the net bag under the table. There were several white fruits that looked like dragon fruits inside, exuding a burst of sweet fragrance, making people salivate. Ai Ching didn't say anything and just looked at him. After a long time, he also felt a little helpless and put the fruits on the table. No matter if this matter is successful or not, the fruits are specially brought by Big Brother for you. You have to accept it, right? Ai Ching nodded. Then Enya's expression became relieved, and he felt joy from the bottom of his heart. After pondering for a moment, he didn't want to beat around the bush in front of his sister, so he directly asked, "Now that Big Brother is able to protect you, come home with me, okay?" He said sincerely, "Before I came, I told Grandpa that as long as you can go home, all the business in the family can be handed over to you. All the assets and operations of the Een family can be decided by you." What about Een Yen? When Ai Ching heard this, she couldn't help but laugh. Isn't he already promising? It's better to leave this kind of thing to a man than to a woman like me. He's still young. Enya answered seriously. For Enya, even if his cousin had become a reserve inspector of the Astronomy Society, he was still an immature child. He always liked to act according to his own temperament. If he didn't train himself, it would be difficult for him to take on a big responsibility. Before he came, he had already beaten up Een Yen because of the matter on the high seas. Ai Ching was indifferent to this. He can grow up, can't he? One day, he can take on important responsibilities. When he grows up, he should be a man, Enya replied calmly. A man has to learn to support his family and not think about stealing things from his younger brothers and sisters every day. These years, little Yen has been a little spoiled. I've already sent him to the border. If he doesn't become an ascendant, don't think about coming back. Ai Ching was stunned for a moment, and she couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. With Een Yan's spoiled appearance, it would be better to kill him than to send him to the border. Aren't you afraid that he will hate you? When a child is wronged a little, he will feel that the world is falling apart. When he grows up, he will know what a man should and shouldn't do. After saying this, Enya shook his head awkwardly. If he really can't grow up, then forget it. I'll take care of him for the rest of his life. If he wants to hate me, then let him hate me. It's better than being slaughtered like a chicken one day. Ai Ching was silent for a long time and couldn't help but sigh. After so many years, you haven't changed at all. I'm almost 30. At least I've become a little taller, right? Enya shrugged and looked sincerely at his sister in front of him. As a brother, I can't do nothing. In the future, I must shelter my younger brothers and sisters. Little Ching, this is what I think from the bottom of my heart. I know. AI Ching nodded. Inya's expression suddenly became hopeful. Then will you come back? I won't. AI Ching shook her head and calmly refused. I'm living a good life now. To be honest, I don't want to have anything to do with the Een family. Inya was stunned for a long time and sighed helplessly. In a few days, it will be your grandfather's birthday. You have to come back, right? What will I do there? Congratulate him? AI Ching was amused. She lowered her head and looked at her wheelchair. Won't it be annoying to carry this pair of legs? I know that in the early years, there were some things that the family did too much. It's reasonable for you to have opinions about the family. But great-grandfather has changed now. Inya hesitated for a long time. He has admitted that what happened in the past was his fault. If you can come back home, he can apologize to you in person. The old man who had always shown a tough face and never bowed his head in his life would apologize. It sounded like a joke, but Inya's expression was serious and solemn. Besides, he had never lied to AI Ching. I feel that he's more reasonable than before. AI Ching nodded slightly. This is expected. After the bloody accumulation stage, capitalists will start to be kind, won't they? After they don't need to fight for food like wild dogs, they will start to flaunt their benevolence. Otherwise, they will be looked down upon. She paused for a moment, looked at her cousin in front of her, and said to him seriously, although I don't know how sincere the old man is, it's useless to say this to me, right? If he wants to apologize, shouldn't he tell my mother in person? Inya sighed and didn't know what to say. After a long silence, he could only say softly, I have the final say in many things in the family. If you can come back home, I can protect you. At least I can guarantee that what happened in the past won't happen again. AI Ching was silent for a long time. She didn't speak and just stared at him. For some reason, she suddenly laughed softly. Brother, if you can promise me a little earlier, I won't be called a crazy woman in a wheelchair behind my back. She withdrew her gaze. I should be angry, brother. Although I don't hate you, I don't even want to argue with people about what happened in the past. I can only tell you that I'm living a good life now. I have my own job and things I want to do. I don't need the Een family to take care of other things. Is there no room for negotiation? Why do you want to reason with a crazy woman? Brother, is a person's forgiveness really so important to you? Or is it that the old man will be afraid if there is a cripple in the way? Een, you didn't speak anymore. Time passed quietly. When the clock rang, he got up, took out a plane ticket from his pocket, and placed it in front of AI Ching. Find a way to transfer abroad. Xiao Qing. Go to London, Rome, anywhere is fine. He said, I'll leave tonight. You can't wait to do it so soon? AI Ching asked coldly. If great-grandfather really doesn't want me to leave, it's useless even if I have a plane ticket. If I say it's okay, it's okay. Inya looked at her as if he was pleading. This is the only thing brother can do for you. AI Ching lowered her eyes and didn't look at him again. After a long time, she suddenly said, I'm going to work. Brother, you should go. Inya hesitated and wanted to say something, but in the end, he sighed silently and turned to leave. Soon, the figure disappeared into the crowd outside the door. After a long time, AI Ching picked up the fruit left by Inya and returned to her schedule. Under the reflection of the afternoon sun, only the ticket was left in place, waiting quietly. In the end, under the cleaning of the construction site, it was thrown into the dust. On that night, due to the weather, other than a flight to London, no planes were able to take off from Jinling. It was a clear, starry night. There were no clouds, in the sky. Just like that, the days passed one by one. Everything was calm and tranquil. As the Asian rookie competition approached, the Social Security Bureau became busier and busier. As the main registration points and entrances, a large number of ascendants poured into Jinling and submitted their participation information to the organizing committee of the Tomorrow News. In addition to the local ascendants of Dongsha, there was no lack of foreign faces. There were even ascendants from Rome and America who came to try their luck. For a large number of ascendants in the wild, this was a good opportunity to verify their strength and seek better treatment. For various organizations, it was also a good opportunity to show their potential and muscles. In addition to Dongsha's Taiching Heavy Industries, Giant Goose Group, Yaoqi Entertainment, and other major groups, there were also Yingzhou's Sodom and Rinshatang, Xinlua's Seven Stars Group, and so on. Even the Social Security Bureau of Dongsha sent people to compete, not to mention Yingzhou's Looming Hall. Several pedigrees were involved and simply treated it as a test and training for newcomers. Even the Theravada Tantra, which had never had a sense of presence, sent a few seeded players to try their luck. If it weren't for the fact that the Indian pedigree had been classified as Rome for historical reasons, this Asian rookie competition would have a direct competition between the two pedigrees. Even though a large number of people had been screened out in the preliminary auditions, there were still more contestants coming in. This was just the contestants, not to mention the audience that was more than 10 times larger. How could there be so many people willing to spend money to buy tickets to the once-in-a-decade rookie competition? After the Rome and America divisions ended, the Asia division was about to begin. As one of the main entrances, Jinling naturally became more and more lively. The big cousin was already very busy these past 2 days, but when he thought about how the Yangqing division was even more chaotic, he couldn't help but gloat. That kid Yuan, Zhao also went to compete. When the big cousin received Mo-san's leave request, he helplessly shrugged. Forget it. It's good to let him know how high the sky is and how deep the earth is. Don't be obsessed with his hairstyle every day. Is there anything else? The people from Yingzhou's Looming Hall also arrived today. They're at Xuanwu Lake Hotel. Do you want to see them? See what? No. The big cousin waved his hand. Tell them to go register in Yangcheng or Yanjing. This is Jinling. They're not welcome here. Oh, right. Keep an eye on that little girl. Hoopa. Don't let her get angry and kill the people from Looming Hall. Don't worry, I already sent her to Yanjing 2 days ago. Is the list of participants from Xian Niao out yet? He said it's free to register, and we'll go take a look when we have time. Mo-san flipped through the list in his hand. Currently, there are about 20 people. Zhu Sun, Guanhai, Luo Shen, Chun Qingyang, Shenyu, Huang Shi. Shenyu is finally not depressed? That's good. It's a good thing. The big cousin nodded. Is there a reply from Elder Luo? Let's see what Luo Xian thinks. Mo-san shrugged. Luo Xian basically hasn't replied directly. I'm afraid it depends on her mood. The big cousin nodded and didn't say anything else. He took the list of participants from Mo-san and paused. There's no why sure? He already registered as an individual participant. Originally, he could have formed a team with the astronomy club, but he's been staying in Elder Luo's gym these past 2 days, and we can't get in touch with him. He's still in there. The big cousin sucked in a breath of cold air. Looks like Elder Luo really pulled out something amazing this time. After sighing a few times, he buried his head in the report again and continued to have a headache. Time continued to pass. Is he still in there? Elder Luo, who came back from a stroll at night, heard the sound of steel in the inner room and raised his eyebrows in surprise. It's the rookie competition tomorrow, and he hasn't given up yet. I feel like his fighting spirit is quite strong. Luo Xian raised her head and listened. Judging from the sound, he's almost there. It's hard to say. Elder Luo shook his head. His footsteps are a bit weak. He's almost out of strength. He almost succeeded a few times just now. Luo Xian said, "It shouldn't be far. When it comes to skills, it's boundless. It's not a matter of hard work. It's a matter of luck if you don't have enough talent." Elder Luo sat down and sipped the protein powder made by his daughter. He's almost at his limit. At most, he'll try 1 or 2 more times. Luo Xian looked back at the door behind her. "I'm quite optimistic about him." In the inner room, the sound of footsteps sounded again. The steel trembled, and there was a hoarse gasp. Although his breathing rhythm is correct, his footwork is messed up. Unfortunately, he's weak. The old man was startled, and then shook his head. "When he faints later, I'll throw him out." In that instant, he saw Luo Xian's eyebrows rise slightly. Immediately afterwards, he was also stunned. There was a loud explosion. The loud sound tore through the thick soundproof cotton, transforming into a thunderous sound that spread in all directions. The windows of the entire gym began to violently shake. What shocked them even more than the loud sound was that within the explosion there was a clear sound that gradually rose up. It was gradually becoming louder and louder. It was the sound of countless steel vibrations in the blink of an eye. The 3 completely different voices overlapped in one place, shaking countless pieces of steel and causing them to resonate, forming a lingering sound that was like a torrent spreading out in all directions. Whether it was walls, windows, or buildings, nothing could stop it. The moment it burst forth, it soared into the air and spread its wings. It rose with the wind of the night, freely soaring through the night sky. It was as if all of Jinling had been enveloped by this thin ripple of origin substance. It was as if it had sensed something. In that instant, the youth who was training hard with a gun in the Social Security Bureau, the man who was meditating in the astronomy club, and even the girl who was wandering on the streets, dozens of ascendants raised their heads in unison and stared at the source of the sound. Then, the door that had been sealed for a week finally opened. "Who said I can't do it?" Huaisher staggered out from behind the door. He held onto the door frame, almost unable to stand steadily. But when he saw Elder Luo, he proudly raised his head and revealed a proud smile on his pale face. "It's just a cord. Can it stop me?" The old man opened his mouth to speak, but before he could say anything, he saw the youth fall straight to the ground and faint. There was the sound of snoring. In the silence, the father and daughter looked at each other in dismay. "I told you, he can do it." Luo Xian observed her father's rare loss of composure. "You guessed wrong." After a long silence, Elder Luo withdrew his gaze and lowered his head to drink the protein powder in the pot. But his shoulders couldn't help but tremble. In the end, he couldn't help but raise his head and laugh loudly. 10,000 miles of Alchemy Mountain Road. The young phoenix is clearer than the old phoenix. The old man slapped his thigh and laughed until he was convulsing. "I didn't expect that at the very end he would give me such a pleasant surprise." And so, just like that, on the last day before the start of the rookie competition, at the very last moment before 12 o'clock, Huaisher had finally graduated. Chapter 209. Name: Huaisher. Age: 17. Gender: You're just a delivery man. Why are you asking so many questions? This is a special service from the sender. She said you'd feel uncomfortable if you didn't ask. The delivery man chuckled and looked at him with a look that said, "Don't be embarrassed, young man." Huaisher's face twitched. He took a small box from the delivery man yesterday. It was from Miss Crow in Exine High. The box was light and seemed to contain something. When he shook it, it made a clattering sound. When he opened it, he found a key ring and 2 pieces of paper. The key ring looked simple. It was a square piece of iron the size of a thumb with a chain hanging on it. It didn't look impressive, but when he touched it with his thumb, he could feel that the black iron piece seemed to be engraved with many invisible Een runes. It exuded a dark and cold aura. I don't think it's anything good. I heard that you're going to participate in the competition. I specially bought you a love amulet. Take good care of it. Huaisher saw Crow's message on the first piece of paper. His face twitched. Okay, now he could conclude that this thing was definitely not something good. He thought for a moment. To be safe, he found a trash can and threw the key ring away. God knows what this woman is up to. When he picked up the second piece of paper, he found that it was a thin piece of sheepskin. It was quite old. There was a list of densely packed Egyptian cuneiform characters. There were also pictures of angels, the sun, and internal organs in the middle. There was no doubt that this was an alchemy formula. Huaisher tried to translate it. He found that the various hidden words were quite general descriptions. They were only useful to stop people who knew nothing about alchemy. He quickly copied it down with the Book of Destiny and translated it. Soon, he found that it was a kind of metal medicine that was quite simple to make. No, it should be called an aluminothermic agent. It was a metal fuel with stable properties and excellent effects. If used well, it was a must-have for murder, arson, and destruction. If he could learn it, Huaisher would have one more weapon. It could even make up for the lack of destructive power of his metal bombs. He wondered where the Crow had gotten it, but at least he had done something good. However, after the name was translated, Huaisher's expression became even more helpless. Abdullah's wrath. He shook his head. You're hopeless. He shook the parchment and was about to stuff it into his pocket when he saw something written on the back of the parchment. When he turned it over to take a closer look, he saw a line of fine and clear handwriting. Prodigal child, what are you throwing around? Quickly pick it up. Shocking. How did you predict this? Huaisher subconsciously looked left and right, only to see people coming and going on the main road. No one was paying attention to him, and no one was looking in his direction. After hesitating for a while, he reluctantly reached into the trash can, picked up the key ring, and put it in his pocket. All right, in today's battle of wits, Crow won again. He just hoped that this sister wouldn't cause any more trouble. He couldn't take it anymore. He continued to move forward. At 8:00 in the morning, Jinling was already filled with people. Countless people were rushing in all directions. The whole city seemed to have woken up from a deep sleep. Their blood was pulsing, their hands and feet were moving, and their bodies were stretching. It was bustling. For most people in the present realm, outside of the present realm, things had no meaning. Naturally, they wouldn't pay attention to the rookie competition. They would just live their lives. But for many sublimators, it was the day of the rookie competition. In the Tomorrow News mobile apps competition column, Huaisher discovered that there were more than 7,900 participants who passed the audition this year. Although according to the rules, as long as the sublimators were under the age of 30, whether they were from the present realm or the major borders, and their rank was not higher than grade 3, they were eligible to participate. But wasn't this number a bit exaggerated? But thinking about it carefully, it was reasonable. After all, according to the statistics of the Astronomical Society, there were about 170,000 sublimators in Asia. A considerable number of them were blank sublimators who didn't have the stigmata or didn't plan to spend a lot of money to buy the stigmata. If everyone could live their own lives, why would they waste their time fighting and killing? If sublimators wanted to make money, it wasn't difficult at all. Naturally, they didn't need to work hard from 9 to 5. As long as they had the ability and found the right direction, even if they didn't break the law, they still had a considerable advantage. More than half of them were working hard to get rich. In these 170,000 miles, after going through the registration and the audition, it was reasonable for there to be 7,000 sublimators. But 7,000 people, it would take a few days to count them all together. How could they compete? Because the rules of each rookie competition were completely different, and even different regions were different. The previous records didn't have any reference value. The only thing that was similar was the high difficulty and the harsh trials and competitions for the sublimators, and there were often unreliable places. It was said that 1 year in the American rookie competition, all the participants were pulled to a prehistoric region of hell and played a tribal conflict. In the accelerated time hell, it was said that in just a few months, a few scholars from the Russian Federation joined hands and led a group of primitive people to climb the technological ladder at the speed of light. They relied on Big Ivan to settle everything. No one could guess what the organizing committee of Tomorrow News was thinking. They could only react accordingly and see who had a stronger foundation. Thinking of this, Weischer put away his phone and stopped thinking about these messy things. He quickly trotted back to the hotel he was staying at. Last night, he slept like a log in the gym and didn't wake up until 6 o'clock in the morning. He still felt dizzy and exhausted. He took a taxi to the city park and ate a few green plants before he came back to his senses. There were only 2 hours left before the competition officially started. He had to hurry and enter the venue. The way to enter was quite simple. It was like participating in a cooking competition, but there was no need to find a fork in the road and wait until midnight. He just had to bring the official competition certificate issued by the organizing committee and find an elevator. After quickly changing his clothes, Weischer checked the things he brought with him. According to the organizing committee, as long as he arrived, he didn't need to bring border relics or weapons of mass destruction. Even if he brought them, they couldn't be brought into the venue. To Weischer, this was practically nothing. He himself was equivalent to a walking weapon rack and a biological weapon of mass destruction. There was no need for him to rely on external objects, so there was no need for him to bring anything else. He just took out his original set of chemical protective clothing and put on the helmet again. He also didn't forget to take a special epic item from the astronomy club, the human skin mask, and put it in his pocket. People were afraid of fame, and pigs were afraid of being fat. What if some strong person wanted to use him as a stepping stone to establish their power? When he was almost done, there were only 10 minutes left before the deadline for the contestants to enter the venue. He picked up the iron plate given to him by the organizing committee and walked into the elevator. The moment the elevator door closed, an unprecedented silence enveloped him. All sounds disappeared quickly. The outside world was stripped away as the elevator closed. The only thing left in the world was this small iron box and Weischer himself. Without needing Weischer to press it, it began to slowly sink. In the slight sense of weightlessness, it stopped in place as if it had landed in a basement. It's quite fast. Weischer twisted his neck, took a deep breath, and waited for the elevator to open. However, the elevator door didn't open. Instead, as if it had finally finished reversing, he suddenly stepped on the accelerator. It flew up. In an instant, Weischer's vision turned black. He only felt the elevator shake violently and roar upward. In the sharp and resounding vibration, it rose level by level. From F1 to the first floor, it quickly swept past the second floor, the third floor, the fourth floor, the fifth floor, and it was still accelerating. In the end, all the indicator lights in the elevator were completely extinguished. The rise didn't stop as if it wanted to throw Weischer into the stratosphere. In the end, it came to an abrupt end amidst the loud roar. In the overloaded smoke and the ear-piercing alarm, the elevator door slowly opened. A staggering figure came out, holding the door. Dizzy, only now did Weischer realize that he was actually airsick. As far as the eye could see, it was a pure, white sky, and earth. There was nothing in the sky above the entire world. There were countless elevators erected on the vast white land, and people were continuously walking out of the elevators. Under the guidance of huge black penguin-shaped robots, they gathered in one place and looked at each other in dismay. Welcome to the 9th venue of the Asian Rookie Competition. Please find your seat according to the sign and wait for the competition to begin. A black goose-shaped robot that was 2 stories tall bent down. Its 2 extremely cute eyes stared at Weisher. Its eyes were emitting a green light. Above its head, there were dancing neon characters. Words such as "use money to create happiness" could be vaguely seen. In addition to this one, there were dozens of them wandering around the venue. Loudspeakers constantly played various voices. Please observe order. Do not crowd or fight in the venue. Please do not die in the venue. Please do not enter the exclusive resting area for Shinua's advanced members. Scan the QR code and follow. One click to understand the rules of the rookie competition. You only need 1 origin crystal to become a member on the spot. You will also receive exclusive tips. May you ride the wind and break through the waves to enter the finals. Weisher was dumbfounded. Was it that commercialized? When he found his seat and sat down, he realized that he wasn't the strangest person in the venue. There were many people dressed strangely. In comparison, he was only wearing a helmet, which was very reserved. The people closest to him, on both sides, were around 10 meters away. In addition, there was a white halo floating above their heads, forcibly blocking all attacks. In other words, everyone was forced to enter a peaceful state. At such a distance, he couldn't even hear a few words of trash talk. As far as the eye could see, he couldn't see any familiar faces. Even if there were quite a few people staring coldly at the people around them, provoking them with killing intent, no one was moved. A few people who had tried to fight in the venue had already been killed by the pitch-black goose-shaped robots that had descended from the sky. Then they had been blasted to death by the announcement that the border is not a lawless place. It was unknown whether those goose-shaped robots were advanced technology or relics from the border, but they actually emitted waves of 4th-tier origin substance, firmly suppressing anyone who wanted to cause trouble in the venue. There were around 800 or 900 people in the venue. They seemed to be waiting calmly, but the atmosphere outside the venue had reached a climax. Inside the venue, a screen suddenly appeared above everyone's heads. In the midst of an impassioned melody and a beautiful CG animation, the Tomorrow's News logo and the Giant Goose Group's logo appeared. Immediately after, the camera in the broadcast room turned on. Before the person appeared, a long string of words that sounded like a tongue twister could be heard. Hello, friends in front of the screen. Welcome to the 19th Asian Rookie Competition organized by the Tomorrow's News and the Giant Goose Group, sponsored by Jade Lake Entertainment, Sodom Electronics, Ren Xiaotang Industries, 7 Stars Group, The Voice from Hell Organizing Committee, and the Abyss Choir. Using money to create happiness. Ren Xiaotang is #1 in the world, guarding Uncle's smile. I am the host of the competition, your good friend, Dieting. An honest, middle-aged face appeared in front of the screen. After finishing this speech that would take even 2 minutes to finish, he smiled at the screen and said, I'm sure everyone can't wait for the rookie competition to begin. Then, let's cut to the chase and play a 20-minute advertisement. What 20-minute advertisement? Also, aren't you one of the top 7 ascendants in the Eastern Summer Country? When did you become the host of a rookie competition? For a moment, Weisher was stunned. He had a stomach full of curses, but he had nowhere to vent. Soon after, he was swallowed up by the endless advertisements. Master Sword, a free gift with a click. The pinnacle of Eastern Summer's open world, Origin Fiend, is waiting for you to play. Online office, cloud display, Cluster Group's generous contribution. Come here and connect with your old colleagues. The plot is beautiful and touching. The two-dimensional giant, yesterday's broken boat. After the series of advertisements, Huaisher was completely numb and began to doubt his life. It wasn't just in the venue. When the camera switched from the advertisements to the competition venue, there was already a wave of boos coming from the packed audience. Negative advertisement. Get lost, host. We want to see the big sister. Ha ha ha. It seems that the audience reacted very enthusiastically to the advertisements just now. Don't worry. Scan the QR code below the screen and order immediately. You can also enjoy a 10% discount for Penguin Diamond members. In front of the screen, Dieting smiled calmly and skillfully threw out all kinds of advertisements and sponsorship lists. In the end, when the audience was about to smash the TV, it said unhurriedly, "Finally, before the competition officially begins, there is a surprise to announce." In order to bring the audience the best experience of the competition, the organizing committee has specially invited a mysterious guest to commentate on the scene. Dieting paused for a long time. After whetting the audience's appetite, it reached out and pointed to the entrance next to the live broadcast room. Next, let's welcome our live broadcast guest, Miss Bai Dizzy. Impassioned music began to play. For a moment, the entire competition venue was boiling. Bai Dizzy, the 14-year-old Eastern Summer's second, the world's youngest crowned contestant. Most importantly, it was a beautiful big sister. For a moment, everyone's heart was filled with anticipation. Only Huaisher had a bad premonition in his heart. Wait, in such a serious occasion, it shouldn't be, right? Chapter 210. Then, until the end of the impassioned music, not a single person walked through the entrance. In the silent live stream, the Harkin's smile had already stiffened on the spot. For some reason, the Harkin's voice rang in everyone's ears. Fortunately, just as the Harkin was about to lose all hope, the door to the entrance was finally pushed open. A soft sound of footsteps could be heard. Under the spotlight, a gentle smile appeared in front of everyone. Huaisher wasn't the only one who was stunned. Even the Harkin froze on the spot. It was as though they were asking, "Why are you here?" It was as though the woman had finally returned after a long journey. She was carrying a huge backpack, a sun hat on her head, and a hiking stick in her hand. But her smile was bright and clear. She looked around and couldn't help but be a little surprised. Is this a live stream? Did I come at the wrong time? So you know about it. The Harkin had a stiff smile on its face as it widened its eyes, and threw a "Why are you here?" look at the Harkin. Then the Harkin turned around and glanced at the Harkin as well, throwing back it's hard to explain look. Then the Harkin threw a look that said, "I knew she'd gone missing again. But wasn't she just backstage? Where the hell did she go?" The newcomer threw a look that said, "Urgent mission has been called away, so I'm here to take over." The two completed the exchange of glances. Like hell, it was like a chicken talking to a duck. In the end, the two reached a consensus in just a few short glances. Although they didn't know what had happened, they had to leave it at that. The Harkin's eyes were already twitching, and it looked as though his mouth and eyes were slanted. After a dry cough, he said to the audience, "In the venue, let me introduce everyone. This is our live guest, Miss Bai Zhe. Madam Bai Zhe, please greet the audience." "Hello, everyone." Bai Zhe sat on the chair in a rather reserved manner and waved to the audience in a soft voice. After taking off her sun hat, her black hair cascaded down like flowing water and spread across the ground like a meandering stream. Her smile was bright and beautiful. Is this the Bai Zhe whose combat strength is above Fu Sangguang's? Huaisher frowned in confusion. He didn't look like he could fight at all. Or rather, he looked like he couldn't fight at all. Judging from his relaxed posture and sleepy appearance, he seemed to be at the level of an average Tier 5 origin substance. No, he was even below the level of a Tier 5 origin substance. But soon, he noticed the strange behavior of the audience on the screen. When they heard that Baizé would replace the White Emperor's son to commentate, the audience was stunned. After a group of people came to their senses, they suddenly slumped in their chairs and sighed in disappointment. Another group of people was stunned for a moment before they suddenly became excited and cheered even louder. Great! Although he couldn't see the younger sister, he could see the cute and beautiful older sister. Then, the two groups of people looked at each other. Their eyes were filled with disdain, as if they were looking at their mortal enemies. But for some reason, the stalemate disappeared in an instant. At the same time, both sides revealed a trace of gentleness in their eyes. They reached an understanding. There's nothing wrong with being a lolicon. It's just that he was traumatized when he was young. Yes, there's nothing wrong with being a big sister. It's just that he lacks some maternal love. A strange thought suddenly arose in their minds, causing the dispute to disappear and peace to prevail. It was like an illusion. When Baizé sat down on her chair, the originally restless crowd instantly calmed down. It was as if they had been bestowed with wisdom and patience. Everyone seemed to have understood something, and they smiled at each other. It was very harmonious, except for the Harkin. The Harkin's face was about to turn green. He frantically gave Baizé a look, telling her to quickly put away her divine mark. If they continued to be so lovey-dovey, the competition wouldn't be able to continue. What's the point of fighting? Friendship comes first, competition comes second. Just add each other on WeChat and become friends. Baizé seemed to have sensed that something was wrong. She revealed an awkward smile and tapped her trekking staff with her finger. In an instant, the silence was gone. There must be something wrong with the brains of those lolicons. It wouldn't be wrong to shoot each and every one of them. What were those idiots thinking? If they were so lacking in motherly love, they should just go back to kindergarten. Peace was fleeting, and at this moment, the dispute was like adding oil to the fire, becoming more and more intense. Everyone's eyes seemed to be on fire, covered with blood vessels. The Harkin's ears twitched under his long hair, and he gestured wildly at Baizé with his palms under the table. Okay, this is enough. I'm hosting a competition. I'm not going to let the audience kill each other. It wasn't just the stadium. Even the venue itself was filled with tension. Even the pressure of dozens of steel geese couldn't suppress the eerie and gloomy atmosphere. Everyone was sharpening their swords as they glanced at each other. Huaishir gasped. He no longer dared to underestimate any Tier 5 combatants. If not for the fact that he had the Book of Destiny with him, he wouldn't even have noticed the sudden changes in the arena. Everything seemed to be going according to plan, and there was nothing out of the ordinary. Everything was natural, regardless of whether it was the calm and peaceful tranquility or the tense restlessness. Everything seemed to be the way it should be. Everyone didn't even know how to resist. As the countdown ticked down to the last second, the awkward interaction between the host and the guest finally came to an end. The two men glanced at each other, and the Harkin looked up at the camera and revealed a beaming smile. Time is ticking away, my friends. The sound of firecrackers is gone, and the peach blossoms are gone. Wait a minute. Bloody hell, give me a new teleprompter. That's the one for the new year. Yes, that's the one. He coughed dryly without the slightest hint of awkwardness. In short, with the arrival of the hour, I hereby announce on behalf of the organizing committee that the 19th Asian Rising Stars competition has officially begun. In that instant, Huaishir heard a roar coming from above his head. The ground beneath his feet trembled violently. The strange sensation that he felt when he was in the elevator earlier filled him once more. His face turned pale with fright, and he subconsciously gripped the armrest of his chair tightly. Then he saw the pale white sky and earth tremble abruptly. The dome that was originally glowing with a pure, white light suddenly opened up, revealing the surging dark clouds overhead, as well as the deep rumbling of thunder in the distance. Under the dark canopy of the sky, the sound of crashing waves rose and fell one after another. Thick water vapor and splashing water droplets converged into a viscous mist that leaked down from the gradually opening dome. Everyone felt their faces get wet. Huaishir saw dew quickly condensing on the glass in front of his helmet. Thunder rumbled across the gloomy sky. There was a loud roar. A torrential downpour gathered in an instant and sprinkled down on the mortal realm. However, it didn't fall on Huaishir's body at all. In his astonishment, he discovered that the rainwater was actually rising up against the sky, flying out of the endless tide and disappearing into the dark clouds and lightning. The hurricane howled and burst forth with a roar. The dome finally opened completely to both sides, and Huaishir finally caught a glimpse of where he was. In this rain, they were on a huge freighter, sitting on chairs welded to the floor, quietly staying in the warehouse like goods. The surging tide and waves kept surging, teasing this huge freighter. It was like a toy, easily swaying, tossing, flying, and falling, smashing the oncoming tide, and moving forward with a loud rumble. In the dark rainstorm, a low cry echoed in the distance. Then, a deafening siren burst forth. The siren and searchlights tore apart the curtain of rain and mist, revealing the other freighters that were braving the wind and waves in this endless sea. The ascenders from the other subvenues looked at each other in astonishment through the rain. Only Huaishir sucked in a breath of cold air. He raised his head and looked at the gradually dissipating dark clouds above his head. "Damn, it can't be," as he whispered. The lightning and dark clouds above his head finally tore apart a huge gap under the washing and shaking of the rain. From there to here, it seemed to span thousands of miles. It revealed the appearance of the sky. No, that should be the real Earth, surrounded by the darkness. Huaishir saw a huge, silent city. It was as if it was submerged in the sea. The darkness was like a tide, wreaking havoc in the vague outline of the city. The whole city was like a rotting whale in the sea, bobbing in the invisible tide of darkness, revealing a decaying and strange aura. At this moment, how could Huaishir not understand that she was already at the border? To be precise, he was in the tyrannical sea that hung high at the border of Asia. Under the protection of the giant Goose Enterprise, he braved the wind and waves all the way, gradually approaching the city under his feet. Excitement. A feeling of excitement overflowed from the mountain ghost's sacred mark, making Huaishir feel the anticipation and desire of the miracle in his body at this moment. There was also a deep resonance with the darkness in the city. There was no need for words. He already knew that it was probably the arena prepared for this year's rookie competition. Far away from the present and protection of the border, the light of sparks. A hell without a doubt. Just as the camera of the live broadcast reflected the outline of the city, all the viewers in the special seats fell into a brief moment of astonishment. Then, in the front, the representative of Ingzhou Looming Hall, the elegant old minister's face suddenly turned pale. "Protest! Protest!" He got up angrily and roared at the young man representing the Social Security Bureau. "I want to see His Excellency Xian Niao immediately." The young man called Big Cousin turned back, raised his eyebrows, and showed a strange expression. "His Excellency Xian Niao is reviewing the project of Jixia. If you have a request for a meeting, you can convey it through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs." How ridiculous! The old minister glared at him with his eyes wide open. We express a serious protest against East Xia's actions. We will never allow such interference with our country's territory and sovereignty. For a time, everyone who understood showed an ambiguous smile. They did not get involved in the conflict between the Social Security Bureau and the looming hall, but showed an expression of watching a show. Chapter 211. What are you protesting about? Big Cousin was still calm. He put down the fruit in his hand and scratched his head, as if he didn't understand anything. Although I don't know what you are talking about, it seems that you are dissatisfied with the arrangement of the rookie competition. But this should have nothing to do with the Social Security Bureau of Dongsha, right? If you have any opinions, you should directly respond to the organizing committee and the Astronomical Society. Isn't this a conspiracy of the Dongsha family? Mr. Laoqing angrily pointed at the city on the screen, his white beard trembling violently. Don't tell me you know nothing about this. Yes, you are probably the only one who doesn't know anything. Big Cousin replied coldly. The rules of the competition are agreed upon by the organizing committee and the Astronomical Society. About this special arrangement, it has been announced a month in advance according to the procedure. Didn't you check it? Unfortunately, a minute ago, the announcement period ended. Therefore, your protests and objections should be invalid. Announcement? Mr. Laoqing knew that he had been played. He forcibly suppressed his anger. Where is the announcement? Why don't we know about it? On the home page of the rookie competition website. As he spoke, Big Cousin raised his phone and showed him the image on the screen. At the bottom of the Tomorrow News competition homepage, in the middle of a large pile of colorful advertisements, there was a row of pixels that could barely be seen with a magnifying glass. You see, as long as you click here, zoom in. Every word can be seen clearly. Big Cousin zoomed in on the dust-like handwriting and squinted at the old man. Grandpa, times have changed. You should also learn to use a smartphone, right? As soon as he finished speaking, the expression on her husband's face turned extremely ugly. On the screen, the brilliance of countless stars suddenly rose. Between the dark sky and the heavy rain, Huaishur heard the roar of the sky again. Not only the cargo ship they were on at this moment, but all the steel ships that were lined up in a row and braved the wind and the heavy rain. At this moment, pitch-black cannons rose from the hull and aimed at the dark city below. In the next instant, countless sparks shot out. The dazzling seven-colored light shot out from the cannon and soared into the sky, dragging a long trail behind it as it fell toward the dark city below. Over 1,000. Thousands of star-like rays of light shot out. Relying on her dynamic vision, which was completely above the norm, Huaishur tried her best to see. Finally, through the rain and fog, she caught a glimpse of the star's body. They were large and small metal boxes, but each of them had a different color. Most of them were pure white, and among them there were several hundred streaks of purple. However, what was even more eye-catching was the extremely sparse faint gold mixed within, as well as several streaks of almost imperceptible resplendent dark gold. The stars of different colors fell into the city in an instant. There was no pattern to their distribution, but soon the light dissipated, and it was difficult to see any trace of them. Huaishur reflexively pulled out the Book of Destiny and poured his origin substance into it. After illuminating the outline of the city, he marked down the locations where the dark golden light had landed. 17. A total of 17 dark golden boxes. Before he could finish marking them, he heard the Harkin's voice. This time, it didn't come from the screen. Instead, it came from all directions. This top expert of the Eastern Summer Country had finally revealed his strength. His voice seemed to burst forth from the trembling of all things. Even though the sound was loud, it still echoed clearly in everyone's hearts. Then, I will now announce the rules of this competition. I ask the contestants to listen carefully. This time, the competition will take place in the infernal realm below. As for the specific rules of the competition, I'm sure you've already guessed them. Once you descend into the city, you will no longer be restricted by any rules or laws. You can find materials and equipment to equip yourself as you wish, defeat your enemies, complete the mission displayed on the system panel, and obtain the final victory. In order to ensure that the competition is enjoyable to watch, we have also prepared a mysterious surprise for all the participants. As he spoke, huge containers were thrown out of the cargo ship one after another. They fell into the dark clouds below and shattered with a loud bang. Countless metal pieces flew out of the containers and connected with each other, forming something that looked like a satellite. A layer of faintly discernible light mist spilled out from within, enveloping the entire city within. The rules laid down by the Creator were imposed on the city. Heaven and earth were transformed. Immediately afterward, spots of light fell on the contestants, and a virtual interface appeared in their souls, displaying the contestants' identity information, current points, and the missions they had triggered. Now, the organizing committee has used the Giant Goose Group's Shinua framework to modify the entire arena. In addition to the system interface, it has also been given a false life. Within the framework, contestants who are killed will automatically leave the arena, and their lives will not be in danger. This will allow the contestants to display their abilities to their heart's content. However, if some unexpected situations occur, the Shinua framework may not be able to protect the contestants. Therefore, if you feel that you can't handle it, please head to the designated location in the outer area and apply to leave the arena as soon as possible. After reading out the malicious rules, the Harkin finally said, "Now, then, you may choose your own landing location. If you don't enter the arena after the fleet has swept past the arena, you will be deemed to have forfeited. The competition will officially begin in 10 seconds. I hope everyone has a good time." The countdown began. 10, 9. Weisher recalled the rules that the Harkin had explained. He couldn't help but feel that something was amiss. However, the countdown didn't give him any time to think. In the blink of an eye, the countdown had reached 0. The competition had officially begun. Dozens of streaks of light rose from the cargo ship and flew into the darkness below. A fierce battle began in midair. Weisher instinctively wanted to press the button, but his heart skipped a beat. At the last moment, he retracted his hand. He looked up in the direction the fleet was heading. He recalled the location where the stars had fallen. Right in front of them, there was a large area where a large number of boxes had fallen. According to the records in the Book of Destiny, there were at least 3 dark gold boxes that had fallen there. Now, the entire arena had been re-established by the Creator. Under the cover of the Shinua framework, the entire competition could be seen as a large-scale virtual reality game. After spending so many years playing games for free, how could he not know the nature of the giant goose? Those boxes were probably the surprises that the organizing committee had prepared. No matter how he looked at it, there was nothing wrong with grabbing the golden box first, right? Weisher held his breath and suppressed the restlessness in his heart. He waited for the fleet to slowly move forward and sweep past the dark city above his head inch by inch. When they were close enough, he pressed the button first. In the blink of an eye, flames enveloped him. He rose into the air and fell toward the dark city above his head. But right after that, he heard the sound of air being torn apart. Right behind him, there were dozens, close to 100, of flames soaring into the sky with him. The stars fell toward the dark city below. As he fell, Weisher constantly corrected the angle of his flight, trying to get as close as possible to the area where the boxes were concentrated. But right after that, he heard the heavy sound of wind behind his head. When he turned around abruptly, he saw a winged figure rushing toward him. In the air, the sublimator in the form of a flying bird brazenly attacked Huaishur. Its flaming claws swept across the air, but it still extinguished the flames on Huaishur's body that were helping him fly. Seeing the figure tumbling in the air and falling to the ground without being able to adjust his direction, the winged sublimator sneered. It flapped its wings and accelerated its descent. But right after that, it felt as if its retreat was tied up by something. It was suddenly pulled back. In the violent fall, the flying bird paused and looked back in shock. It saw the rope wrapped around its leg and Huaishur, who was using the momentum to counterattack. "You think you're so great with wings." Bang! Huaishur's feet stepped on the winged sublimator's back, almost breaking its spine. But right after that, as it tumbled and fell, the rope loosened from the enemy's leg and wrapped around the winged sublimator's neck like a snake. It contracted. Just like a rein, it suddenly tightened. The winged sublimator felt the pain. It subconsciously spread its wings and stopped falling. Then it felt the bastard on its back lift his leg and kick the back of its head. Dissatisfied with the winged sublimator's slowing speed, it tightened the reins and coldly ordered, "Hurry up!" Huaishur activated the origin substance in his hand. A large amount of negative origin substance flowed through the sorrowful rope and into the winged sublimator's body. The explosion made the winged sublimator dizzy, forcing it to speed up. In the blink of an eye, the person behind had already caught up. Following closely behind was a skinny man. As if he was weightless, he floated through the air and flew past Huaishur. His pale face suddenly turned 180 degrees, and poisonous flames shot out from his eyes. He didn't hit Huaishur, but instead hit the winged sublimator. In an instant, the winged sublimator under Huaishur's feet was burned by the flames. Under the pincer attack, it dissipated into smoke. It was actually the first to appear. And in midair, hundreds of falling streaks of light collided with each other. They had already begun fighting. After falling for a few hundred meters, quite a few people had already left the battlefield in the midst of the chaotic battle. Without the ability to fly, Huaishur could only miserably roll in midair to dodge. The rope in his hand was constantly thrown out and retracted, relying on the momentum of each target to dodge. There were a few times when he was almost hit, and there were many times when he couldn't catch a target at all. The city under his feet was getting closer and closer, which made Huaishur even more surprised. That city wasn't an ancient city like he had imagined. Instead, it was more like a modern metropolis with endless skyscrapers. In particular, in the direction where they were falling, there were countless skyscrapers. However, there was no trace of anyone, nor was there any light. There was only darkness that danced like a living thing, and pairs of red eyes that appeared and disappeared in the darkness like illusions. There was a guy who was greedy for speed. He fell straight down and directly installed a sharp lightning rod, and was eliminated from the competition on the spot. And while falling crookedly, Huaishur determined the direction in the hurricane that was blowing in his face. He threw out a rope and suddenly tied it to the railing on the top floor of a skyscraper, changing the direction of his fall and smashing diagonally into a skyscraper. The huge tempered glass shattered with a wail. Huaishur landed on the ground. The instant he was dozens of centimeters away from the ground, his terrifying falling speed suddenly slowed down. The force of his fall was offset by an invisible force. He successfully landed under the rules of the Shinue framework and rolled into the glass shards on the ground. When he raised his head and looked out of the broken window, he only saw stars falling like rain, lighting up the silent sky of the entire city. He knew in his heart that finally at this moment the competition had begun. Chapter 212. Countless contestants were sprinkled into the dark city like stars. On the big screen, the red number on the upper right corner began to soar rapidly. Wow, more than 40 contestants have left at the beginning. The competition is really intense. The Harkin lamented in a tone that sounded like it was gloating. I hope there won't be any unnecessary casualties because of the competition for the items. As soon as he said that, the number on the screen jumped from 40 to 160. In an instant, more than 100 people died. Outside the deliberately isolated space, the Shinue framework quickly pulled up the scene just now and played a close-up on the big screen, vividly showing the tragic state of the dead. Cheers of excitement could be heard from the audience. In the midst of such an intense battle, everyone became excited. A few contestants at the peak of Grade 3 have left. What a pity. Dieting sighed. Among the contestants this time, as far as I know, there are many ascendants with extraordinary backgrounds. Not only are they limited to the present realm, but there are also many contestants with rich experience in border battles. It is even said that a calamity musician has entered the venue. I wonder what the results of the competition will be like. Miss Bizet, what do you think? He threw the topic to the guest, indicating that she should stop slacking and express her opinion quickly. Don't let me say it alone. It's too awkward. Bizet thought for a moment and asked seriously, can we sit and watch? Dieting was so angry that he almost fainted. Fortunately, the director's office quickly captured an extremely exciting, chaotic battle and threw it on the main screen, successfully attracting the audience's attention. In a park, a dozen ascendants began a fierce battle as soon as they landed in order to fight over a pale gold box. In the midst of the chaotic battle, a shadow that had been lurking for a long time suddenly picked up the pale gold box and ran away. However, he immediately realized that no matter how hard he tried, he could not touch the box. By the time the ascendants in the chaotic battle reacted, they had been reduced to ashes by a punch. What a pity! The Harkin chuckled mockingly. Oh, I forgot to remind the participants that the boxes of light gold and above can only be opened by those who have fulfilled certain conditions. That said, most of the restrictions on the boxes aren't too difficult. Just look around the vicinity, and you'll most likely find some clues. Ah, it's open! It's open! Following the rupture of the underground water pipe, water suddenly sprayed out from the fountain, splashing in all directions, instantly landing on the chest. The chest opened, and a pair of colorful shoes flew out. At the same time, the sublimator, who had been in control of the situation and was confident of victory, was killed by 3 contestants after a brief moment of daze. A few of the sublimators who were obviously on the same team picked up their shoes, turned around, and threw them out of the field, where they were caught by their teammates. After putting on the shoes, the fastest contestant in the team actually transformed into countless afterimages. He ran and jumped on the building against gravity, and even jumped twice in the air in an extremely illogical way. He was about to shake off all his pursuers in an instant. In the end, with a boom in the distance, it exploded into a ball of blood. Sniper! The boots landed on the ground again, spotless. Under the cover of the sniper, the picker quickly disappeared. Ah, that's the best long-range weapon in this batch of gold equipment. The Harkin raised its eyebrows in astonishment. Has it been snatched away so quickly? It seems that the sublimators of the Social Security Bureau have a huge lead. I wonder if the other contestants will turn the tables around. As though it had nothing to do with him, the Harkin's tone of judgment was filled with pride, and it made the others gnash their teeth in hatred. Countless scenes of fierce battles flashed across the screen. But soon, the first dark gold treasure chest was finally discovered. The battle once again fell into a stalemate, and the audience couldn't take their eyes off it. It's hard to predict the outcome. The Harkin sighed. Those with strength will be defeated by schemes, and schemes will be changed beyond recognition in the chaotic situation. The seated contestant of the Theravada Tantra, Orochi, has actually left the field. I didn't expect this at all. What do you think, Miss Bays? Fearing that she would say something else this time, he added, what kind of contestant can take the lead in the battle at the starting line? Well, it's hard to say. Bays was stunned for a long time, as though she was thinking about something. Finally, she tapped her palm and nodded. It depends on luck. Those with good luck will definitely win. The Harkin's expression twitched, and he forced a smile. Can you be more specific? As for the details, let me take a look. Bays looked up at the screen in front of her and saw the countless scenes of the sublimators flashing across. Suddenly, she raised her hand and pointed at one of the shadows. I think he's very lucky. His results should be pretty good. The Harkin's expression twitched, and for some reason he glared at Bays. Then he looked in the direction that Bays was pointing at, and he was stunned. On the screen, there was a figure crawling up from the ground in a sorry state. He wore a dark helmet on his head, and his entire body was covered in a robe that resembled a chemical protective suit. He looked very sneaky, and the Harkin couldn't help but feel that he was up to no good. And more importantly, the data showed that only second order. The Harkin shook his head, and then said disapprovingly, then let's wait and see. Huaishur was completely oblivious to the fact that Bays had praised him for his good luck. He still hadn't figured out where the hell this place was. It was almost as though he had fallen into an office building. When he looked around, all he could see was a dense cluster of cubicles and work desks. There were even a few pots of green plants in the corner. But the strange thing was that the entire company was covered in dust. There wasn't even a rat to be seen, much less a person. Anything was possible in hell after leaving the modern realm. That said, the discovery of a city that was also part of a modern civilization left him feeling a little strange. Just then, he heard a loud roar coming from outside the broken window. The sublimators who had just landed had already begun to fight. Then he saw a dazzling golden light break through the floors of a building not too far away and soar into the sky. A heroic voice echoed in all directions. Wow, a golden legend. That was fast. Huaishur sucked in a breath of cold air. It hadn't even been 3 minutes since the start of the competition, and a dark golden box had already been opened. There was a moment of silence. Then all of the sublimators in the surroundings began to gather around the box in a frenzy. The battle was getting more and more intense. Then there was a continuous roar. Then a blinding white light burst out from the building not too far away. Wherever it passed, all of the sublimators who were trying to get close to the box froze in place. Then a cold wind blew, and everything collapsed into dust. A single beam of light had wiped out at least dozens of contestants. What the hell was that? Huaishur didn't have time to observe any longer. He had already checked the location before he fell. According to the records in the Book of Destiny, a box should have fallen on this building. But when he came down, he couldn't find any traces of the box on the roof. The box should have been hidden in the building. More and more flames fell from the sky. The contestants landed on the ground one by one and rushed towards the building. There wasn't much time left for him. It looks like the first dark golden treasure chest has been sealed. On the big screen, the Harkin nodded and looked down at the second light that lit up not too far away. It raised its eyebrows in surprise. The second dark golden treasure chest has been activated as well. That's fast. What a coincidence. The contestant that Baizé said was lucky is also there. The Harkin smiled and gestured for the director's office to turn the camera over just in time. Let's take a look at that contestant's performance. "Come, let me take a look. You're developing well." Bang. The screen switched instantly. Before anyone could see anything, there was a crisp sound. Then, a splatter of scarlet blood splattered on the screen. Countless people jumped out of their chairs in fright. What the hell? 10 seconds ago. As soon as Huaisha rushed out of the door, he saw a huge silver-white metal box lying at the end of the corridor. Then, the glass shattered with a bang, and a sublimator rushed in from the sky. When he saw Huaisha not too far away, he froze for a moment. Then, he looked down at the metal box next to him. Immediately, he was overjoyed and reached for the metal box. And so, the metal box fell apart with a loud bang. A shotgun engraved with gorgeous patterns emerged from the light and fell into his hands. When he looked up with a sinister smile, he discovered that Huaisha had already disappeared from where he was standing. Then he appeared right in front of him. He stomped his feet. The floor trembled. He subconsciously raised his shotgun, only to see Huaisha getting into position and throwing a punch at his chest. "Drummer!" Thunder roared. The sublimator didn't even have time to pull the trigger before he was sent flying and smashed into the wall. He couldn't get up even if he wanted to. There was a clear dent in the shape of a fist on his chest that was deeply embedded in his back. It was clear that he had been punched through. "Thank you." Huaisha reached out and picked up the shotgun on the ground. He checked the bullets. There were about 6 of them. He raised the gun and aimed it at his opponent's face. Then, just as he was about to pull the trigger, he hesitated for a moment. When the sublimator saw that Huaisha seemed to be thinking about something, he was overjoyed. He opened his mouth and was about to beg for mercy when he saw Huaisha turn the shotgun around and swing the barrel as though he was swinging a hammer. Then he swept it across the sublimator. Bang! It was as though he had smashed a rotten persimmon. A mixture of crimson and pale white shot out, covering almost half of the wall and sputtering. It was a one-shot. There were only 6 bullets. He couldn't afford to waste them on such a person. Hiss! The audience gasped when they saw such an explosive scene as soon as they came in. They became even more excited when they saw the video recording of what had happened. Was it really that exciting? Even the Harkin was slightly stunned. Then, under the table, it gestured to the film crew, asking them to bring in a few more shots. There were several sublimators approaching. He had a hunch. There was bound to be big news coming up. Chapter 2:13. As the corpse vanished into thin air, Huaisha heard a crisp sound. A copper coin fell from where the corpse had been. When he lowered his head to pick it up, he discovered that it was a small coin in the style of Ingzhou's ancient times. It was heavy and had a face value of 1 tael. He didn't know what use it had, so he put it away for the time being. Huaisha raised his gun and charged downstairs. Time was precious. He directly opened the door and wanted to take the stairs, but he was met with 2 stunned faces. There was also a person following behind him who lowered his head and continued to yell, "It's definitely here. I remember it clearly." Fuck. 3 people. Without wasting any time, Huaisha raised his gun and pulled the trigger. The person in front flew backwards, and the person next to him was splashed with blood by the flying red steel balls. However, the bullet was embedded in his skin and didn't harm his internal organs. This was a defensive player, at least Tier 3. That person was also a tough guy. After taking half a shot from Huaisha, he didn't make a sound. Instead, he opened his arms and charged towards Huaisha. The steps under his feet were crushed under his feet. His speed was incredibly fast. That gun was definitely a product of opening a chest. It was incredibly powerful, and even he couldn't defend against it. He definitely couldn't give Weisher a second chance to pull the trigger. Then, he saw Weisher toss the shotgun into the air and charge towards him. A jumping chop. The light of an axe flashed. The heavy blade of the axe wedged itself into the opponent's head. Anger burst forth, shaking the origin substance. In that instant of astonishment, Weisher raised his hand and slapped it 4 times. Every time he moved, he hit, after brushing past him. The sacrificial knife that had pierced his chest spat out a hot mist of blood. He died on the spot. So many pieces of equipment. This bastard, how many chests had he opened? In his shock, that person couldn't accept the reality that he had seen. He fell backwards, leaving behind a despairing question. Why, are there also pay-to-win players here? Weisher had already stepped on his corpse and leapt into the air. He grabbed the shotgun that had fallen from the air and aimed it at the last raised face. The trigger was pulled. The moment he landed on the ground, he casually grabbed the 3 Judge Jean that were flying in the air, stuffed them into his pocket, and continued running. His hands did not stop moving. He pried open the lever-type shotgun, threw out the hot shell, and stuffed in 2 bullets. The body of the shotgun closed. His foot kicked open a door, and he looked into the room behind it. The search began. The live stream fell into a brief silence. Even the audience was shocked by the straightforward and fierce fighting style that didn't have the slightest bit of sloppiness. In an instant, the 3 contestants were killed as if they were vegetables. The Harkin's mocking smile twitched for a moment. Taking advantage of the change in the camera angle, he lowered his head and flipped through the information on the competition. He really wanted to know where this beast of burden came from. When he saw the information displayed on the teleprompter and the training records from the Orchard Gym, his eyes twitched violently. Damn, I haven't been back in the reality realm for only half a year. How did that brat Zhu Hongqian manage to raise such a savage beast? Wait, the Astronomy Society? This brat's background is a bit complicated. Director, add 2 more scenes and get the editors to focus. If the next 2 scenes are edited well, they'll probably be given a bonus. As he worked in secret, many of the scenes that were originally intersecting with each other were fixed on Weisher. He wanted to see who would emerge victorious this time. Nothing. 3 minutes passed. Weisher had already searched 2 floors, but he still hadn't found the dark gold treasure chest. He began to feel more and more anxious. He could hear more and more footsteps coming from downstairs. But in the midst of his mad dash, his footsteps suddenly stopped. He suddenly turned around and looked to his right, the elevator. Just behind the gap of the elevator door, there was a bright flash of light. There it was. However, the numbers on the floor were rapidly changing. The elevator was descending. Weisher was stunned. He was furious that he had missed the elevator. He swung his axe and sacrificial blade, forcefully prying open the elevator door. He looked down at the rapidly descending steel cable, only to see the elevator rapidly descending in the darkness. Tisk! Weisher shook his head, grabbed a steel cable, and jumped down. The chase began as fast as lightning. At that moment, the elevator arrived. Someone pressed the button to stop it. In the elevator, the sublimator looked at the illusory golden light in front of him. As the elevator descended, the light gradually solidified. With every floor it descended, the outline of the treasure chest became clearer. But before he could be proud, he felt the elevator suddenly stop. He subconsciously looked to the right, only to find the door on the right closed. On the other hand, he heard the door on the left open. Oh no, this elevator has double doors. Before he could turn around, his head was smashed by the intruder. The intruder reached out his hand in ecstasy and stroked the increasingly solid box in front of him. He turned around and shouted to his companions in surprise. "I found it!" Boom! The elevator shook. The ceiling was torn apart by the axe. The burning mountain ghost held the sacrificial blade upside down and descended from the sky. "Bastard, what did you find?" The blade of the sacrificial blade pierced through the top of his head. Huaishur raised her hand and pulled the trigger, killing the contestant who was holding a submachine gun outside the elevator. His body flew out, but the P-90 model submachine gun in his hand and Judge Jean were caught by a rope as Huaishur stretched out her hand. They were pulled and fell into Huaishur's hand. The elevator doors closed. The elevator began to descend. The instant exchange seemed simple, but Huaishur had used all his strength and reached an extreme speed that he had never reached before. Before the other party had time to make a move, he had violently attacked and finished off his opponent. Otherwise, if they were entangled, it would be hard to tell who would win. Next to him, as the elevator descended, the treasure chest solidified a little more. The elevator was still descending. Countless footsteps were already rushing in the elevator's direction. Huaishur took a deep breath and closed his eyes. The elevator suddenly stopped and opened again. This time, a fishy wind whistled from both sides. The ascendants on both sides unexpectedly launched an attack at the same time. Then, they collided with the black muzzle of the gun. As the two weapons spat out blazing flames, a figure flew out and was blasted into meat paste by the shotgun. However, outside the door on the left, an illusory figure flew in at an extremely fast speed. The spray from the submachine gun was not as wide as the hail of bullets from the shotgun, so he was able to dodge it. Then, his body suddenly turned illusory. The translucent body passed through the blazing submachine gun and pounced straight into Huaishur's body. The elevator roared loudly. Under Huaishur's trampling, without hesitation, Huaishur took a step toward him. He raised his arm, and his elbow was like an iron rod. The strength of a drummer burst forth, and thunder exploded. This wasn't a deliberate move, nor was it a deliberate combo. It was just a natural and pure inner door elbow strike, driven by instinct. Pa! It was like a bubble bursting. Under the explosion of the drummer's strength, the illusory ascendant exploded on the spot. Blood splattered, and half of the elevator was dyed red. However, Huaishur's movements did not stop. As his left elbow pushed out, his left hand holding the submachine gun aimed at the broken ceiling of the elevator and pulled the trigger. With a whistling sound, the ascendant who had jumped down from the building, like Huaishur, did not respond and turn into Judge Jean. Instead, a Roman-style square shield suddenly unfolded on his arm and blocked the bullet. His entire body crashed into the elevator, causing the entire elevator to shake again. The floor under his feet wailed. Without waiting for him to land, Huaishur repeated the same trick. He threw away the submachine gun in his hand, and the blade of an axe appeared and chopped down. Bang! The blade of the axe was blocked by the Roman square shield. Then, the sharp edge of the square shield slashed at Huaishur like a heavy sword. Huaishur retreated to dodge, but the ascendant raised his hand and threw out a short stick hidden behind the shield. The sacred mark was activated. An electric light burst out from the short stick, stabbing directly at Huaishur's face. Suddenly, the ascendant's outstretched arm was abruptly propped up by the barrel of Huaishur's shotgun. The hot barrel hit the skin, and a sizzling sound was heard. The attack did not hit, and Huaishur's axe blade turned into a sacrificial knife in midair and chopped down at the ascendant's outstretched arm. The enemy quickly let go. In an instant, 3 of his fingers were chopped off. But the shield was raised again, blocking Huaishur's blade. Bang! Bang! The ascendant behind the shield saw that the situation was not good. He immediately shouted in Latin, "Leave the box, and the Seven Stars group will be friends with you." "Ha ha!" Huaishur sneered. In the fierce attack, he retorted in Ingzhou language, "We, the Looming Hall, don't want to be friends with you." But the opponent did not wait for Huaishur's response. In order to find a gap to regroup in a moment of stagnation, he hid his body behind the square shield and suddenly charged at Huaishur. Electric light burst out. In the narrow elevator, the sound of wind and thunder was faintly heard. If he was hit, it would be no different from being hit by a truck. At the critical moment, Huaishur turned around and stepped, brushing the edge of the big shield to dodge. At the moment of turning around, the lever-type shotgun suddenly opened and threw out 2 hot shell shells, leaving a trace of smoke. 2 new bullets had been loaded into the gun body. Click! The gun body closed. As the shield hit the gradually closing door of the elevator, a loud noise burst out. Under the impact of the shield, the door flew out as if it had been hit by a bomb. The whole elevator shook violently, but right after that, the man felt the burning red barrel of a gun pressed against the back of his head. Boom! Jin Xiaobing fell to the ground, but outside the broken elevator door, the fierce footsteps were getting closer and closer. Revenge for Director Cui. 2 angry faces appeared from behind the corner and rushed straight at Huaishur. Huaishur raised his hand, caught the falling P90, aimed at the top of his head, and pulled the trigger. The bullets swept in the elevator shaft above his head, and the sharp sound kept bursting out. In a flash, there was a dull sound of a steel cable breaking. The elevator fell. Down. Bye-bye. From the surprise attack at the beginning to the fierce response that followed, the fierce fighting style not only shocked the audience, but even in the VIP seats, there were many spectators who clicked their tongues, praised, and applauded. Only the representative of the Seven Stars group was livid. Sitting in the corner, he glanced at the old man of the Looming Hall, but did not say anything. He would remember this grudge first, and under the stare of the Seven Stars group, the old man of the Looming Hall also felt a chill down his spine. But more than that, he was dumbfounded and angry. That's not right. I didn't. This person is not ours. Ha! That kid really has some skill. The big cousin laughed softly. It's just that it won't be so easy to deal with next. That girl Shueya. Sometimes even I have a headache. On the screen, the situation suddenly changed. Chapter 214. As the cable snapped, the elevator plunged past the 3rd floor. The sharp sound of friction from the closing of the safety gate was accompanied by sparks, but it was difficult to stop the downward momentum. The elevator, riddled with holes, was still descending. However, Huaishur felt a chill silently. He abruptly turned his head and looked behind him, only to see that a large hole had appeared in the twisted elevator wall at some point in time. A slender figure was already flying through the air towards Huaishur. A finger swiped downwards in the air. In front of that finger, whether it was the wall, the cables, or the outer shell of the elevator, everything was split apart to the sides. It wasn't a violent destruction. Instead, it was as if a door had been opened, easy and simple. It allowed that figure to pounce in unimpeded peak tier 3. Through peak tier 3. What Huaishur felt was an evil chill that was even more troublesome than the nightmare in the Social Security Bureau's prison. After lurking for an unknown period of time and seeing through Huaishur's details, that person suddenly attacked, piercing through all the obstacles one by one, aiming straight for Huaishur's vital points. Then, she saw a pair of ghost fires suddenly lit up under Huaishur's black helmet. A pitch-black fog formed by calamity ash and heart poison rose like a tide, rolling towards the woman who rushed in. What the hell? The woman was stunned for a moment. Her fingers did not stop moving, and an invisible force forcefully split the fog of the halo of fear apart. However, after the fog rolled out from both sides, a resplendent cross-shaped spear blade whizzed towards her. The spear of compassion whistled through the air, bursting forth with a dragon's roar. Under the infusion of origin substance, the spear blade lit up with a flame-like brilliance. The instant response had already used up all of Huai Shi's strength. However, in midair, the woman's figure suddenly stirred up ripples like water. Huai Shi's eyes blurred for no reason. Did he stab empty air? However, immediately after, the ripples dissipated. The woman had already taken advantage of Huai Shi's momentary confusion to dodge the sudden thrust of the spear. Is this an illusion? By the time she reacted, the woman had regained her composure and attacked Huai Shi. However, Huai Shi sneered. The blade of his spear trembled, and dragon blood flew out and landed on her face. In an instant, her hair, which had been tied into dozens of small braids, turned pale. His energy dissipated. "Let's die together." Huai Shi roared, raised his hand, and threw out a grenade. In such a narrow space, there was no room to dodge at all. The woman's expression changed abruptly, and she quickly retreated. As she retreated, the elevator behind her actually opened up a gap for her to enter and exit, and the moment she left, it closed up. At the last moment, Huai Shi's grenade exploded. There was a burst of smoke and a few sparks. It fell to the ground and split into 4 pieces, quickly dissipating into origin substance. He had been fooled. The woman was stunned for a moment. Behind the closed elevator doors, the figure waved goodbye to her. The elevator started to descend. It was already too late to catch up. He had reached the first floor. Beside Huai Shi, the dark gold treasure chest had completely solidified. The youth no longer hesitated. He reached out and pressed down, and a bright golden light shot into the sky. Wow, a golden legend! A heroic voice spread in all directions. The treasure chest opened. However, Huai Shi didn't have time to see what was inside before the premonition of death erupted again, causing him to suddenly fall to the ground. Immediately after, in the midst of the rumbling, the elevator doors that hadn't opened yet shattered, and a large hole appeared. Then a red-hot bullet brushed past Huai Shi's helmet, pierced through the space inside the elevator, and flew out of the elevator on the other side, which no longer had a door. It smashed into a pillar in the spacious hall and pierced through a hole the size of a mug. When he raised his head, Huai Shi only saw that there was no one in the hall outside the hole created by the bullet. Through the shattered tempered glass door, on the main road hundreds of meters away, there was a thin figure crouching on the ground. The slender gun in his hand, which glowed with a faint golden light, was aimed straight at the elevator that Huai Shi was in. Sniper! How long had it been since the beginning? And someone had already picked up an 8x scope and a 98K. Huai Shi reached out and slapped the ground. Black fog rose up, obscuring his figure. Immediately after, he picked up the item in the treasure chest. It was actually a heavy vambrace and a thick manual. What manual? He didn't have time to look at it. He directly sent the manual into the Book of Destiny, relying on the origin substance to forcefully read it. At the same time, he grabbed the vambrace and rushed out of the elevator, afraid that the strange woman upstairs would chase after him again. As he madly ran, he intentionally avoided the sniper's aim. He hid behind a pillar, and in an instant, he was about to escape through the back door of the reception hall. However, immediately after, he felt his body tremble violently, and a large hole appeared in his chest. Blood splattered everywhere. Heavy injury. Then, the sound of a gunshot suddenly rang out. Had he been hit? Huai Shi turned around in disbelief, only to see the pillars of the reception hall. He had indeed been hiding behind an obstacle, but how had the bullet hit him? Could it be that it was the legendary gunfighting technique that allowed the bullet to change directions when the trigger was pulled? Wasn't this a bit too unreasonable? Under his feet, a stone fragment flew up, hitting Huaishur in the face. He lowered his head and saw the crack that had been created by the bullet not too far away, as well as his own shadow that had been hit by the bullet. Insinuations. Eastern Summer's third-level stigmata. Chi. Was this even possible? Huaishur suddenly knelt on the ground, panting violently. He heard the sound of footsteps not too far away. That woman had caught up, and he already had no way to escape. Elder sister, quickly go. That person has already been hit by me. A hurried voice transmitted through the origin substance link. Don't let him escape. Roger. On the second floor, Yi Shuya, who had broken through the floorboards, couldn't help but excitedly clench her fists. Luo Shun, good job. Immediately after, the last floor parted under her fingers. She fell from the sky, landing in the reception hall. She excitedly raised her eyes and looked forward. Then she froze in place. Where was he? Following the trail of blood on the ground, she raised her head to look. She only saw that the trail of blood had stopped halfway, and in the empty reception hall, there was not a single shadow of a person. Very quickly, Yi Shuya's line of sight locked onto the back of the reception hall, a huge table at the front desk. Is he hiding here? She casually waved her hand, suddenly pouncing out, and then pouncing on empty air. There was nothing behind the table, not even a shadow of a ghost. In the dead silence, Yi Shuya looked all around, falling into a daze. Where was he? Where did he go? As far as her eyes could see, there was only a separated table, 2 chairs, a few sofas on the left side of the reception hall, and 2 pots of dry green plants. There was not even half a shadow. Ran away. Yi Shuya did not believe in heresy and turned the entire reception hall upside down. She even tore apart a few tiles under her feet. After confirming that there was no place for anyone to hide, she coldly snorted and turned around to leave. As the sound of footsteps gradually faded away, the reception hall that was in a mess returned to its deathly silence. Only a few sublimators who clearly came late did not believe in heresy and went upstairs to search a few times, and then resentfully left a long, long time. Even the camera in the broadcast room was removed because there was nothing good to see. After that, a figure suddenly appeared in the air. It was Yi Shuya, who had already left. She suspiciously looked all around, frowning. Looks like he really ran away. But the army hidden in the surroundings did not discover any heavily injured sublimators. Could it be that the dark gold equipment was a stealth item or something that helped people escape? After wasting half an hour, there was already no more time to squat here. She suspiciously looked all around one last time, suppressed the strange feeling in her heart, and turned around to leave. Another half an hour passed. A heroic shout came from afar. Wow! Golden Legend! The reception hall was still silent. Only the pot of green plants in the corner trembled a bit. In the silence, other than the cries of surprise from the audience outside, there was nothing abnormal. The pot of green plants trembled again. Still nothing abnormal. After confirming that Yi Shuya, that woman, had finally left, the scene of the pot of green plants suddenly disappeared, revealing Huaishur, who was leaning against the corner of the wall, already on the verge of death. Oh my God, I'm going to suffocate to death. He wore that vambrace, crawling on the ground with difficulty, wriggling to the side of another pot of green plants. He took off his helmet and took 2 deep breaths. As a result, his face was visibly rosy, but the big hole in his chest still did not close. Raising his hand, he drank 2 more bottles of silver blood potion. Finally, it looked like he was in one piece. He exerted force with his elbow, propping himself up to lean against the wall, his lingering fear not disappearing. He had still underestimated the heroes of the world. A moment of carelessness, and he almost died at the spawn point, but all of this was unquestionably worth it. This round of battle he had undoubtedly won. Huaisher raised his arm, scrutinizing the strange-looking vambrace on his arm. He could not help but have a happy expression, one of the 17 pieces of dark gold equipment in his hands. It was precisely at the last moment that Huaisher had swallowed the entire manual, using it to save himself. Although it was not as terrifying as the dark gold equipment that had killed dozens of ascendants with a flash of white light, its power was still strange enough. Illusion Vambrace. It was also known as the portable panoramic simulator. That's right, it needed to insert a coin. He really did not know where this damned setting came from, according to the manual's description. As long as you threw in the gold left behind by the dead contestants, you would be able to perfectly disguise yourself as any object that the vambrace touched. As long as it was alone, and not closely linked to other things, it would work. Although it was just a facade, purely on the surface, there was no possibility of being seen through. Even the user's body would be correspondingly enlarged and shrunk without any flaws. It was impossible for any divine mark or any border armed forces to see through its illusion without touching it. It was simply the best choice for sneak attacks, and camouflage. The cost was 1 gold per use, and there was no time limit. If you were patient, you could squat until the end of time. It also had another function called Complete Camouflage Mode. For 10 minutes, it would consume 3 gold to disguise the user as anyone who had appeared within a 5-meter radius of the equipment. Perfect simulation. While in deep thought, Huaisher stroked the equipment he had just obtained, and the corners of his mouth slowly curled up into a mischievous smile. But immediately, his face turned pale again, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. No, let's hide for a while. I still need to kowtow a little more. He looked at the greenery around him, and there was still not enough. A minute later, a small stone chip quietly slid out from the ruins of the hall, bouncing on the curb and heading towards the park. Chapter 215. From the looks of it, the second dark gold equipment has already been obtained by this lucky contestant. At this moment, Di Ting, who was hosting the competition, lowered his eyes and looked at the footage sent by the director's office. He couldn't help but smile, and then he felt pity for the other contestants. The most sinister of the 17 dark gold equipment had been obtained by such a ferocious beast. There would be a good show to watch. Needless to say, in the Darknet's casino, Huaisher's odds should be skyrocketing. Di Ting waved his hand and rejected the piece of paper, with Huaisher's identity written on it from the director's office. It's not the time yet. What's the hurry? He changed the topic and continued, Next, let's see who will get the 3rd dark gold equipment, the only weapon with a limited number of uses. On the screen, the various fights were still going on, and the number of contestants leaving had soared to more than 1,500. It had only been an hour since the start. If this went on, it wouldn't take 7 days. The winner would be decided tomorrow, right? Of course not. Di Ting hid the malice in his smile, and his eyes became expectant. Until now, the group of contestants who were happily killing each other hadn't noticed. From the beginning to the end, he had never said that this game was a battle royale. The first test was coming. Finally willing to leave, when little stones skipped away on the roof of a distant building, the young woman named Yi Shuya revealed a happy smile. But she just watched from afar, as if she had no intention of chasing after him. Beside her, Luo Shun, who was holding a gun, hesitated for a moment. Aren't you going to take him down? Take what down? Yi Shuya turned her head, as if she didn't understand what he was saying, but also as if she had no intention of making a move. Why should we take him down? We've already lost. We've been played 3 times in a row. If we rush up and shout for revenge, can we change the fact that he won a round from us? Sister, it's fine as long as you don't let the tiger return to the mountain. Luo Xin glanced warily in the direction where Huaishir disappeared. That guy always gives off the feeling that he'll make a big mess. Isn't that even better? Yi Shuiya retracted his gaze and waved his hand indifferently. He has already proven his strength and qualifications. Rather than fighting with such a strong opponent in the early stages until both sides suffer and benefit others, it would be better to see whether or not we can meet in the finals. Moreover, as a good woman, you can't cling onto someone like a piece of sticky candy, right? Good woman? Smoking, getting tattoos, and changing boyfriends as if they were changing clothes was one thing, but how could there be a good woman like you who killed people at the border and beat up her colleagues and opponents just for fun? Luo Shun cursed in his heart, but he didn't dare to say it in front of her. He was afraid that his legs would be broken. In the distance, a signal soared into the sky, causing Yi Shuiya's smile to become even more joyous. The 3rd piece of dark gold equipment was obtained. There are a total of 3 pieces of dark gold equipment in the Central District, and we've already given one away. Now, people can't say that the Social Security Bureau is too overbearing, right? She turned around, and in the whistling wind high in the sky, she lowered her head and gazed at the countless steel jungle below. Finally, her line of sight converged on the deepest part of the countless buildings, an ominous building hidden in the shadows. Next, don't tangle with irrelevant people. After tonight, attack the Mitsuyu building with all your strength. Yi Shuiya waved his hand. Spread the word. We don't care about the other places in the Central District, but we want the Ginza District. The other contestants either die or get the hell out of here. Along with her wave of her hand, faint starlight appeared in the sky, turning into countless fox-like silhouettes, following the wind into the shadows, spreading the warning from the Social Security Bureau in all directions. The sky gradually darkened. Like an illusion, it became darker and darker. Originally, outside the border, in this hellish area without the sun and stars, there was no difference between day and night. But now, everyone could clearly feel that night was coming. As the night gradually approached, an ominous aura gradually rose from the dead silent city. It was like waking up from a deep slumber. The darkness and ghosts hidden in the hellish area gradually opened their eyes, peeking through the cracks at this group of people who did not belong here. Grinding teeth, sucking blood, countless indistinct, illusory shadows appeared from the streets and alleys, as if they were the projections of another world bustling about. Occasionally, across the distance between life and death, they cast a cold glance at this world. Clearly, this was a hell that had sunk deep into the darkness, but from who knows where, there was a ray of light from the setting sun that made people feel even more oppressed. It could not illuminate anything. Instead, it made people's hearts feel even more uncomfortable. Not bad, I can actually bask in the sun. In the gloomy and lonely park, Huaishir, who was sitting on the grass, raised his head, looking at the dim light of the setting sun in the distance that carried a faint blood-red color. He didn't know if it was because his vitality was replenished and he was relieved, or because his mind was happy after basking in the sun, but he actually felt more comfortable and carefree. There was a feeling of returning home. Huaishir had just recovered from his serious injuries, and his qi and blood were weak. He walked through the dark green grass and the thorns with poisonous thorns, touching them one by one. Although he urgently needed vitality now, he did not choose to drain the pond to catch fish. Taking 1 or 2 points from each tree was enough. Anyway, there were many trees here. If he rubbed here and there, the vitality that he had lost would be replenished, and just as the countless trees swayed, Huaisher suddenly stopped and looked around in confusion. It seemed like he was lost. The park was clearly very small, and there were not many trees, but now he seemed to have unknowingly walked into a forest. He turned left and right, but he could not find the way. Suddenly, there seemed to be a shadow floating past in front of him. When he looked carefully, he could not see anything clearly. He only heard faint laughter coming from the darkness behind him, but when he turned around, there was no one behind him, until he continued to look forward and saw that in the deepest part of the forest, under the dim yellow setting sun, a figure stood quietly waving at him. It seemed to be calling out to him, "Come quickly, come quickly." The shadow called out kindly, "It's getting dark, come quickly." Calling me? Huaisher was stunned for a moment and pointed to himself. The shadow was still waving at him, motioning him to come closer, making him feel a burst of enthusiasm from the bottom of his heart. Although he felt that there was something wrong, Huaisher still followed the figure forward, following behind him. For some reason, the figure seemed to be standing far away. No matter how Huaisher moved forward, he could not close the distance. Instead, he walked and walked, not knowing where he was. The surrounding environment became darker and darker, and he could not see clearly. A little bit of the setting sun fell between the dark shadows of the trees, faintly illuminating the broken stone statue of Mithraea in the grass. The moss on the corner of Mithraea's mouth hooked up into a cold smile. But suddenly, the figure waving in front of him paused, as if he found something wrong. He strode towards Huaisher and looked at his face. The face of the figure could not be seen clearly. In the darkness, it seemed to be blurred, but at this moment, there was no doubt that it revealed a kind of anger and irritation. "What are you doing? You have to be careful." Huaisher was stunned. Really? I said something was wrong. Obviously, he did not speak, but the voice of the words was undoubtedly transmitted to Huaisher's ears. It sounded very irritable, but he still kindly reminded him, "Young man, where did you come from? Don't run around. Hurry up and find a hotel." The figure stretched out his hand and pointed to the road next to him. "Go quickly. It's very dangerous outside when it's dark." Thank you." Huaisher did not know what had happened. Until now, he finally clearly distinguished the gloomy aura of the figure, which was completely different from that of the living, and a faint resentment and hatred. It seemed something was not quite right. It seemed that it should be a mutant and remnant soul that survived in this hell, but it did not seem to have the intention of harming him. He did not feel any malice from the beginning, or rather, it was quite warm. Although he did not know what had happened, since it had pointed the way, then he would just go. "This is the way, right? Just walk forward. You'll be out in about 3 minutes." The figure was a little impatient. "Remember, you must never look back, or you'll never be able to get out." "Okay." Huaisher nodded and strode along the small path between the weeds. She walked around a few thistles and bushes and passed through the thick shade of the trees. Not long after, she returned to the street. When he raised his head, his smile stiffened. He looked at the unbelievable scene in front of him. Then he froze on the spot. "What is this?" At the same time, all the contestants felt a vibration in front of their chests, and the system panel from the Shinue framework popped out and displayed in front of their eyes. The main mission was updated. Time of the Devil, but the description of the quest was vague. It only said, "Now that we've encountered this rare moment of the devil, let's begin an unforgettable night tour." Or, "Before the long, sleepless night arrives, let's find a candlelight that can protect us." The countdown began. 1 hour. F*CK, the mission. In a dark alley, a thin ascendant beheaded the last enemy and opened the box in ecstasy. Then he froze on the spot, his face ashen. Asterisk CK. Why are there bullets everywhere? I don't even have a gun. Why the hell do I need bullets? The 2 rows of golden magazines were flashing with a bright glow. It mocked him for the futility of his efforts for half a day, and when he was done with his futile rage, he bent down, picked up the magazines on the ground, and was about to turn and leave. Then he saw a thin figure standing at the entrance of the alley. It was a woman. She wore a long white dress, and her strange long hair flowed down her shoulders like black water. She wore a huge mask on her face, and her eyes, which were covered by her bangs, were faintly visible. They looked empty, as if she was smiling. She stared at the stunned descendant. "Am I beautiful?" she suddenly asked. Chapter 216. Am I beautiful? While the sublimator was still in a daze, she took another step forward and opened her mouth to ask again. A gloomy aura rose and spread out, covering the light of the setting sun. She took another step forward, and her voice became sharp. Am I beautiful? What the hell? The sublimator finally couldn't stand the strange atmosphere. He clenched his dagger and rushed forward. Then he saw the woman pull down the mask on her face. Immediately after, a bone-chilling chewing sound came from the alleyway. At this moment, as the light of dusk gradually faded, strange shadows walked out from the darkness. The demons hungrily patrolled, looking for their prey. They couldn't wait. Following countless sharp wails, the darkness that surged outside this narrow hell began to boil. It slowly rose, as if it wanted to drown everything. The signs had been revealed. The night was coming. After a long, long time, Weisher recovered from the initial shock. He repeatedly checked the broken billboard erected on the building in the distance. Under the dim light, a smiling face appeared on the dilapidated billboard. But now, the smile had fallen apart and turned into an unsettling, incomplete, ferocious expression. Next to the smile, there were still words of the past, announcing to the visitors. Weisher squinted her eyes and struggled to decipher the characters. What's hello come to? There was a gap in the middle, making it impossible for people to see where this place was. But at this point, how could Weisher still not understand where this hell was? This was clearly an ancient city that had sunk in the disaster hundreds of years ago outside the border, Yamatai. But how did the original Ingzhou city become like this? Also, wasn't it now in the open sea, being fought over by the Dongxia lineage and the Ingzhou lineage? How did it become the arena of the rookie competition? Or Weisher slowly raised his head. In the last ray of the setting sun, he narrowed his eyes and stared at the empty darkness above his head. It was like an illusion. For a moment, he saw something. Amidst the endless rising darkness, amidst the bone-chilling tide of darkness, a vague silhouette appeared in the sky. It was a wing, a pair of wings that covered the sky and the sun, shrouding the entire city in shadows. This place was already covered by the wings of the mystic bird. In the midst of the shock, Weisher's mind flashed with a trace of understanding. The Dongxia lineage wanted to use the rookie competition as an opportunity to take down Yamatai. But what did this have to do with my Huaihai Lu Peiqi? When Weisher finally understood this point and threw this question to the back of his mind, he realized that he had already wandered to an unknown place. He stopped outside the door of an ancient courtyard. In the gradually darkening night, the stone lanterns in front of the door, but it didn't make people feel that it was bright. Instead, it set off the desolate scene in the courtyard, making it even more gloomy. As the withered leaves slowly fell on the black stone and white sand, in the pavilion in the courtyard, behind the layers of paper curtains, a cold and lonely voice sounded. It was a pipa. Under the illumination of the light, a woman in a gorgeous robe cast a cold silhouette on the paper curtains. She lowered her head and fiddled with the strings of the pipa in her arms. A hoarse and resentful voice spread out along with the melody. Sorrow meets the bitter rain. The world sighs in vain. Spring has no time to enjoy. The flower of helplessness has withered. Hate to drift away. Hate to drift away. The mournful voice spread far, and wide along with the sharp pipa sound. After the voice had dissipated for a long time, Huaisher raised his hand and applauded from the bottom of his heart. She sang really well. The rhythm of her exhalation is too powerful. Behind the curtains, the woman's figure was stunned for a moment and seemed to raise her head. "There's a small problem. The last beat was a little rushed." Huaisher clapped with his hand. "You see, it should be like this. Da, 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 da. Elongate the melody a little. Trust me, it's not wrong." The woman's figure was stunned for a moment, and her fingers began to fiddle with the pipa, following his words. The final result was indeed better than just now. She seemed to be pleasantly surprised. She put down the pipa and bowed to Huaisher through the thick paper curtains to thank him. Then she raised her white wrist in the heavy sleeves and pointed behind Huaisher. Huaisher looked back and saw the alley behind him. "Should we go this way?" He was stunned and waved his hand to thank her. "Thank you." Huaisher smiled from the bottom of his heart. This was probably why the world would become a better place if everyone gave a little bit of love. The local gangs here are all so polite. Although he didn't know if their words were nice or not, everyone seemed to be talented. He was beginning to like this place. Before leaving, Huaisher turned back and shouted towards the door, "Be careful of those people from the outside. They're all quite violent. It's better for girls to hide." The sound of the pipa intertwined, playing a mournful melody of farewell, sending off the guest, not knowing what she had said wrong. Huaisher shrugged her shoulders and turned to follow the path she had pointed out. At the end of the street, in the dark, a few figures stared at the small phone screen in their hands, staring at the figure disappearing into the alley on the screen. Some stigmata's intuition was quite sharp. If one looked directly at them with malice, it would trigger vigilance. However, through special mirrors or electronic devices, this warning could be eliminated. "Old Five, are you sure?" The leader of the Ascendants asked in a low voice. "It's him. I saw it clearly through the binoculars." The skinny man called Old Five said, "That guy has a dark gold equipment in his hands. He's already injured if we can take him down." He didn't finish his sentence, but his meaning was clear. The Ascendants looked at each other, breathing heavily. Then they picked up the huge cardboard box next to them and covered themselves. They shrank under the cardboard box, their auras strangely hidden. That cardboard box contained equipment from an unknown treasure chest. It wasn't strange for it to be placed so abruptly on the side of the road. Instead, it naturally became a part of the scenery. Even if they moved, they were silent and blended into the night. They followed closely behind Huaisher's footsteps, following the distant sound of the pipa. Then, they lost him in the tangled alleys. They didn't know why, but it was clearly a straight alley, but they strangely went around and around. In the end, they returned to the same starting point several times. They returned to the same pipa music. "No, something's wrong." The leader of the Ascendants squatted under the box, his expression becoming fierce as he pulled out his weapon. "Be careful, we might be targeted by something." The pipa music became more and more desolate and cold, causing people to feel cold all over. From the outside to the inside, it gradually seeped into everyone's hearts, causing them to shiver uncontrollably. That woman, the leader's eyes were cold. "I'm afraid she's some damned thing from hell. No matter what it is, let's go up and take a look first." Another Ascendant climbed out of the cardboard box, holding a pistol in his hand. A holy glow lit up in his hand, sweeping away the cold demonic aura around him. And he walked straight into the courtyard. Wasn't like he hadn't seen this damned thing at the border. No matter how strange and terrifying it looked, as long as he destroyed the main body, then he lifted the curtain, then froze in place. Behind the countless hanging curtains, there was only a desolate oil lamp emitting a faint light. But behind the curtain, there was nothing. There was no trace of anything. In the stillness, the small oil lamp went out noiselessly. In that instant, the curtain closed again, and the darkness swallowed him like a tide. Only a scream, as if the soul was collapsing in shock, came from inside. Soon after, it was swallowed up, and there was no more sound. The original leader was stunned and rushed out without hesitation. Old Five, let's save him together. But Old Five had also disappeared at some point. In the empty courtyard, he was the only one left. The door closed behind him. Not long after, the door opened again, and the courtyard was still in a mess. A pea-sized lamp shone on the side of a beauty, gently stroking the pipa. Beaded curtains and brocade tents do not know the dawn. Who knows the endless sorrow in his dreams? The lonely and sorrowful singing voice spread far and wide. No one responded. It's almost time. Hooper raised his head and stared at the dark sky. There were clearly no stars, but in the pitch-black darkness, a faint moon suddenly appeared. It was like an eye looking down at the world in the darkness, spilling cold and tyrannical. At this moment, as she walked on this piece of land, no one could better understand the terror brewing in this darkness and the raging waves that could devour everything than her. She could feel the countless surging malice in the darkness, all the time. In the end, it actually evolved into a strange melody, as if countless children were humming in unison from far away. The innocent tone carried a chilling energy. Even the sacred Mark Prajna, who was also a transformation type, found it difficult to resist the malice in the voice. She was afraid that it would not be long before the demon wave of 100 demons night. In the midst of rushing, her footsteps suddenly stopped, and she stopped at the door of a temple. A ray of light faintly came from the dilapidated temple. Sensing her arrival, the door of the temple opened slightly, revealing a dim light that did not give her any sense of security. Amber took a deep breath, pressed the hilt of her knife, and walked into the temple. She stopped in front of the temple, raised her head, and stared at the dilapidated Buddha statue. She raised her hand, showing the string of dark red agate prayer beads on her wrist. The last son of the Rygian clan, Amber, is here to stay for the night. Please be merciful, Buddha. In the dead silence, no one responded. Inside, Amber raised her voice again and repeated it until a wooden face appeared in the darkness, staring straight at the girl in front of it. And finally, the gaze fell on the prayer beads on her wrist. Follow me, the face said with a dull voice, and then turned around, wriggling its snake-like slender body, and led her into the darkness. The temple door closed. Chapter 217. The alley wasn't long. Huaishe reached the end after walking for 2 minutes, but he seemed to have been stopped by someone. A pale hand stretched out from behind him without warning and pressed on his shoulder. Huaishe turned around in shock and saw the girl standing in the shadows in the corner. She was wearing a white dress, and her long hair spilled over her shoulders like black water. She was also wearing a mask. She seemed to be looking for help. Sorry. Huaishe was a little embarrassed. I didn't see you just now. Indeed, she had hidden it too well. Even Huaishe herself was shocked. Is there anything I can help you with? Huaishe asked, as if it was the first time she had been asked such a question. The girl was stunned for a moment and looked at him as if she was looking at an idiot. Then she suddenly asked, Am I beautiful? She suddenly asked this. Huaishe looked at her and thought. She had a good figure, but it was hard to say with a mask on. But soon, She seemed to sense that something was wrong. She narrowed her eyes and looked down at Huaishir's chest. Then, she saw a faint emblem on his clothes. It was a small pipa. The girl frowned and quickly reacted. She bowed slightly and said, "Sorry to disturb you." Then, she turned around and left. Wait a minute." Huaishir called out to her. The girl turned around and looked at him with cold and puzzled eyes. Huaishir was a little embarrassed by that gaze. After a long time, he sighed. "Although it's not good to be so direct for the first time. You've already asked." "I can't help it." He reached out and pointed at her forehead. "You can't use this kind of foundation for dry skin. You're going to have pimples." Thanks to the teachings and influence of a certain male cowherd, Huaishir was now very familiar with this. His tone became regretful. "Your skin is really good. What a pity. How do you do your skin care?" The girl seemed to be stunned as she stood rooted to the ground. Only Huaishir continued to impart his experience. "If you have time, how about you try the essence of the MKI? I don't know if I can buy it here, but you shouldn't wash your face too frequently with your skin. You should pay more attention in the future." As he spoke, he suddenly took a step back and carefully observed the startled girl in front of him from head to toe. Finally, his gaze fell on her face, and he frowned. He felt that something was not quite right. Being stared at by that harsh gaze, for some reason, the girl subconsciously wanted to avoid it. She wanted to hide her face in the shadows and turn around to leave. "Don't move." Huaishir's tone became serious. Then, a cold blade light burst out from his hand. He stepped forward and flashed. Her bangs, which were originally a little too long, instantly became shorter and stopped above her eyebrows, revealing a pair of big, panicked eyes. Following that, Huaishir's movements were extremely agile. Left, right, then and then he fixed it. Everything was done. He took a step back, looked at his work with satisfaction, and waved his hand to disperse the blade light. "That's more like it." He nodded in satisfaction and took out a shiny piece of metal. After wiping it on his clothes, he handed it to the startled girl in front of him. "Take a look. With the shape of your face, you'll look better with a hairstyle. Just now, I felt that something was wrong. Your bangs are too long." The girl held the metal piece in astonishment and looked at herself in the reflection in disbelief. Her pair of big black eyes trembled, and she was speechless. "Now, you're prettier than before." Just like that, the youth solemnly answered her question, "Just now." She did not know why, but she could not help but lower her head and felt that her cheeks were a little hot under the mask. "Okay, I have to go, goodbye." Huaishir turned around, waved his hand, and said, "It's late. I heard that it's quite dangerous outside. You should go home early." After taking 2 steps, he heard a nervous voice behind him. Wait a minute. The girl lowered her head and subconsciously rubbed the corner of her clothes with her fingers. "It's almost night. If you don't mind, can you come to my house to rest?" Right. You haven't eaten dinner yet. Right." Huaishir froze for a moment and heard an awkward sound from his stomach. Sure enough, he was a little hungry. "Can I?" He was a little embarrassed. Was there such a benefit to being a barber in the village for the first time? "You're a guest recognized by Master Lawney, of course." As if afraid that he would regret, the girl took the lead and walked 1 step ahead. She looked back at him and said, "Please come with me." Okay." Huaishir followed behind, and then remembered that he did not introduce himself. "By the way, my name is Huaishir from Dongsha. How should I address you?" "Mama E." The girl walking in front said her name. "You can call me Ma E." "Okay." Huaishir walked behind her, following her on the way home. Unexpectedly, the place was not far away. After walking for 200 meters, they arrived. It was an ordinary-looking single-family house with a small courtyard and a parking space. However, there was no car in sight. It should have left. My humble abode is simple, please don't mind. She walked with Why Sure through the dusty door, with a little shame. She opened the door and shouted inside, "Grandma, I'm back." You're back so early today." A kind voice sounded from the kitchen and walked quickly in the direction of the entrance. It was an old woman wearing a gray Ingjo native costume. Her hair was tied up and she looked meticulous, but her face was full of wrinkles, so many that it was a little scary. Seeing Why Sure beside she was stunned. "Oh, you brought a guest? How rare. It's Master Luani's guest. I happened to meet him. So, Ma'i lowered her head and avoided the old woman's eyes. She subconsciously wanted to hide her hairstyle. The old woman seemed to understand something. Her eyes wandered between the two. Soon, she warmly greeted Why Sure. "What are you waiting for? Don't you want to invite the guest to sit down?" She bent down and handed a pair of slippers to Why Sure. After inviting Why Sure to sit in the middle of the living room, Ma'i served tea. It didn't seem to be tea leaves, but Why Sure smelled a strong fragrance of flowers. "Please treat this as your home." The old woman said warmly, "When we were in Yushur, Master Luani had taken care of our family. Today is the time to repay her kindness. Please don't refuse." Oh, okay. The Master Luani they were talking about seemed to be the woman who played the pipa. Why Sure vaguely realized that because of her, he seemed to be treated as a guest. Great. Not only did he have a place to sleep, but he also had free dinner. He couldn't wait any longer. Hearing the sound in Why Sure's stomach, the old woman smiled warmly. "Just in time. Mai's father has just returned with fresh meat. Please wait for a moment." As she spoke, she got up and bent over to the huge box at the entrance. She reached out and casually lifted the top zipper and walked into the kitchen. Why Sure's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. "Auntie, you have a lot of strength." Such a big box, at least enough to fit a person. "And you lifted it up so casually." Just as he passed by, the box shook violently, as if someone was struggling with all their might. With a bang, a person who was trapped inside forcibly opened the lid and struggled to get out. He looked like he had been beaten up badly. His nose was bruised, and his face was swollen. There was even a broken towel stuffed in his mouth. He looked very miserable. Then why did he look a little like Yuan Zhao? Why Sure looked down at the young man in disbelief. "Why is it you?" He still remembered this little brother, who was a few years younger than him. Although he looked like he had a serious Chunibu problem and often spaced out, as if there was something wrong with his brain, they still had some friendship. He didn't expect that after parting at the art gallery, the two of them would meet under such circumstances. He could only say that fate was too damn wonderful. Woo woo woo, woo woo, woo woo. Yuan Zhao widened his eyes and struggled to make a vague sound. Although he couldn't speak, the meaning was clear. "Pretty boy, what are you watching for? Hurry up and save me. Otherwise, this young master will tear you apart." The old woman looked at Why Sure in astonishment. "You know each other?" "It's a child I don't know. I don't know whose family he's from." Why Sure coldly picked up the teacup and made a suggestion. "He looks delicious when fried. It's best to cut him finely. That way he'll be crisper." Woo, woo woo, woo woo woo. Yuan Zhao widened his eyes and screamed with all his strength. He was so scared that tears were about to flow out. "Big brother, I was wrong. I won't dare to do it again. Big brother, give me a hand, give me a hand. Don't eat me." Seeing that he had been taught a lesson, Why Sure put down the teacup and respectfully said to the old woman, "I was just joking. Madam, This is a long-lost friend of mine. Could you please let him go? To be honest, he didn't know if the old woman would give him face. Hearing him say this, the old woman suddenly felt awkward. This is rare, fresh meat. Although you said so, but if we only serve vegetable porridge to guests, wouldn't it be inappropriate? It's okay. I've been vegetarian recently. Weisher smiled and said, If you don't mind, how about I cook? Don't look at me like that. I'm also an apprentice cooking demon. As if in disbelief, the old woman looked at him in astonishment. After a long time, she hesitantly nodded. Since it's like this old woman won't say anything. The old woman said, But when it comes to cooking, please let this old woman help. Yuan Zhao breathed a sigh of relief. Tears streamed down his face. He was sobbing uncontrollably. At that moment, hoarse moans came from upstairs. It couldn't be heard clearly through the thick wooden planks. It sounded like someone was shouting for someone. The old woman frowned and raised her head to scold him. Shut up, old man. There's a guest. Don't embarrass the Hirata family. In the room upstairs, the moans stopped for a moment. Then, they heard muffled voices again. Eat, eat. Looks like everyone's hungry. Weisher stood up and rolled up his sleeves. Where's the kitchen? I've been thinking of a lot of new dishes recently. Although I don't dare say they'll be delicious, they'll fill you up. The old woman happily led Weisher to the kitchen. Only hemp clothes, who had been forgotten by both her grandmother and her guest, sat there resentfully. She felt so wronged that she almost cried. Looking at Yuan Zhao, who was still tied up and making muffled sounds, she frowned in disdain. Then she bent down and asked seriously, Am I pretty? Chapter 218. For some reason, Yuan Zhao didn't seem to have any appetite at dinner time. His face was pale, and he kept shaking in the chair. Eat, why don't you eat? Weisher picked up the spoon and scooped a bowl full of porridge for him. The white porridge was fragrant and sweet, and there were 2 radishes with human faces and vegetable leaves that looked like internal organs floating in it. It gave off a very appetizing smell. In addition to the vegetable porridge, he also asked the old man to try to fry some tempura, and then made 2 servings of buckwheat noodles. Only the old man accompanied them for dinner. Linen seemed to have brought the food to his grandfather upstairs. As for Linen's parents, the old man only said that they went out to work and didn't say anything more. After dinner, the old man took them to a room on the 2nd floor. It had been cleaned in advance by Linen, but it still smelled a little dusty. The old man pointed to the soft bed and said to Weisher, This is yours. Then he pointed to the old bedding that was casually thrown on the ground and said to Yuan Zhao, This is yours. Okay, differential treatment. Yuan Zhao was used to it. It was better to say that he was satisfied to be able to escape from this family's kitchen alive. No, it should be said that he was completely numb. As soon as the door closed, he lay on his bed on the floor, unable to move, as if he had been burned out. In the silence, only the room across the corridor could be heard. The seriously ill grandfather let out a burst of muddy gasps like a broken bellows mixed with hoarse coughs, and occasionally the sound of him taking a few bites after catching his breath. The broken bones were crunched, and the old man's teeth were quite good. After eating 2 servings, he began to call out hoarsely again. Hungry, hungry. Keiko, I'm so hungry. You're so annoying, damn old man. There are still guests here. How much are you going to embarrass our family before you're willing to stop? The old lady angrily scolded. Soon, in the low sound of footsteps, there seemed to be the sound of a bucket being sent into the opposite door. The sound of snoring could be heard. She ate with relish. Weisher didn't expect such a big pot of porridge to be finished. If it wasn't too presumptuous, he would have knocked on the door and asked the old man if he wanted some side dishes to go with the porridge. In short, it was fine as long as the old man ate happily. Carrying a pink towel, Huaishur went to brush his teeth with the toiletries that Hessian had brought over with a red face. After taking a good bath, Huaishur felt that his tiredness had completely disappeared. Although his chest was still heavily injured, the vegetable porridge and various dishes seemed to be rare delicacies. The ingredients were expensive. After eating 2 bowls, Huaishur could clearly feel that his HP had increased. He should be able to recover by tomorrow morning, right? That was great. Why does he still look like he's half dead? He wiped his hair and looked down at the original photo of the moaning man on the ground. Is he just borrowing a room? Why are you so nervous? You must have never stayed at a friend's house before, right? This brat was so Chinibyu that he might not even have a friend. How pitiful, being looked at by Huaishur's pitiful gaze. Even the weak Yuan Zhao was enraged. He climbed up from the mattress and angrily kicked Huaishur. Do you know what they are? Is there a difference between knowing and not knowing? Huaishur looked at him from the corner of his eyes. Why are you asking so many questions? They warmly entertained us for dinner and even gave us a place to stay. How can a brat like you not know how to be grateful? What fucking gratitude? Yuan Zhao was almost scared out of his wits by Huaishur's demonic appearance. If it wasn't for the fact that the family of demons and ghosts didn't have any intention of making a move, Yuan Zhao would have already fled in fright. As if he thought of something, the way he looked at Huaishur became extremely strange. During dinner, the old woman seemed to be particularly attentive in filling Huaishur's bowl with food. Occasionally, she would look at him as if he was a lively steak, indifferent, and with a hint of hunger and scrutiny. It was as if she was looking for a more delicious place. A terrifying thought emerged in his mind. The 2 of them couldn't have been raised by this family of demons to be slaughtered and eaten once they became fat. Thinking of this, he felt more and more flustered. He lowered his voice and looked at Huaishur. Don't you think it's too scary? Huaishur shrugged indifferently. For ordinary people, ascenders are also scary. Moreover, is there anything in hell that isn't scary? Casually, he pulled off the bedding and laid on the soft bed, smelling the faint dust and ancient smell. The dim yellow light illuminated the water stains on the wall. They looked like smiling faces, looking rather cute. This feeling, that's right, it's as if I'm still living in the stone marrow hall. Incomparably peaceful. All right, hurry up and sleep. He casually turned on the light switch and covered himself with the blanket. Finally, he instructed, the competition will start tomorrow morning. You need to conserve energy. Conserve energy, my ass. I think it's better to fatten you up. When you're about the same weight, you can be slaughtered and eaten. I saw the eyes of the youngest female demon looking at you so thirstily, as if she couldn't wait to eat you alive. When the time comes, maybe her appetite will increase, and she can eat a few more tails. Yuan Zhao cursed silently, lying on the bed, unable to sleep at all. Time passed little by little, and the night deepened. As Huaishur's snoring gradually sounded, he felt more and more flustered. This time I'm F** king done for. The gigolo looked as if he had been completely charmed by her. It's like those guys in cartoons who eat too much and turn into pigs. He likes this place so much that he might not like to leave even if you chase him away. Yuan Zhao casually opened the mission panel and found that the mission of encountering demons had disappeared at some point. He didn't know if it was completed or completely failed. There was only a blank space, as if waiting for a new mission to be triggered, but Yuan Zhao had no clue at all. But soon, in the silence, other than the sound of the old man coughing outside the door, there was a faint sound of footsteps, slow and gentle. Stepping on the old floorboards, it emitted a faint, creaking sound. It was gradually approaching. Bit by bit, Yuan Zhao opened his eyes wide, feeling his hair stand on end in the eerie sound of approaching footsteps. Then, his heart turned cold little by little. "They're going to eat me." Yuan Zhao quietly got up and opened his eyes wide. Through the narrow light under the door, he saw a pair of shoes standing at the door. He didn't know how long it had been there. Resisting the urge to scream, he covered his mouth, stretched out his hand, and pushed Huaishir hard, trying to get him to get up quickly. But Huaishir was already dead asleep, snoring, and couldn't wake him up at all. As if annoyed by his pushing, he raised his hand and fiddled with Yuan Zhao's wrist. With a push, Yuan Zhao couldn't help but fall onto the mattress on the floor. And he had already turned over and continued to sleep. He slept even more soundly. In the silence, the sound of Yuan Zhao falling to the ground was so clear that it made his heart jump and his heart turn cold. He wanted to cry, but had no tears. There was only a gentle knock on the door. "Mr. Huaishir, are you asleep?" The gentle voice outside the door sounded so cold, as if it was waiting for them to fall asleep and come in to eat a glutton. Yuan Zhao covered his mouth and stared at the door with wide eyes. But in the end, not a single ferocious female ghost came in to eat him. The person standing at the door waited for a long time, and when there was no response, he quietly left. In the silence, there was only the soft, dripping sound of the rain hitting the window. Yuan Zhao held his breath and looked at the door in fear. After a long, long time, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. His whole body was sweating profusely, and he felt that he had come back from the brink of death. But half of his foot was still outside the cliff. "No, I can't just sit here and wait for death. I have to escape from this demon's den. Now I can only rely on myself, young Master Yuan, to turn the tide." He tried hard to summon up his courage and looked around, trying to find a way out. But when he turned around and looked at the window behind him that was covered by curtains, he froze in place, like falling into an ice cave. He didn't know when it started, but outside the window there was a faint shadow standing quietly, separated by the curtains. He couldn't see his appearance, but that figure raised his hand and constantly knocked on the window, gently, like he wanted to continue until the end of time. Again, and again, it knocked on Yuan Zhao's heart, almost making him scream out loud. The ambition that had just risen instantly turned into nothingness. His whole body hid under the blankets, shivering. "Hell is so scary. I want to go home. Cousin, save me, Yuan Zhao, are you inside?" As if his prayer had been received, faintly, Yuan Zhao heard the voice of third elder sister, Mo, coming from outside the window. "So familiar. We're here to save you. Yuan Zhao, can you hear me? Hurry and open the window. If you're late, you'll be eaten by the monster hiding inside." "Yes, I have to open the window. I have to escape from here. Otherwise, I'm just sitting here and waiting for death." Bang! On the bed, Huaishir, who was sleeping soundly, turned over. The shotgun by the side of the bed was swept by his arm and fell to the ground, making a dull sound, waking the dazed Yuan Zhao from his dream. Then he was so scared that he almost collapsed on the ground. Until now, he realized that he had unknowingly stood in front of the window, stretching out his hand to pinch the curtains, almost pulling the curtains open. He covered his mouth, carefully retreating, shrinking under the blankets, plugging his ears, not daring to listen to the calling outside the window. After a long time, in his half-awake state, Yuan Zhao finally couldn't hear the sound of knocking on the window. Outside the window behind the curtains was empty. There was no longer that strange figure just now. Yuan Zhao finally heaved a sigh of relief. His whole body went limp, feeling that the ambition just now had disappeared without a trace. Escape is impossible. It's impossible to escape in this lifetime. It's so scary outside. Might as well stay here and let them eat him. Despondently climbing up from the bed, he wiped his face and subconsciously looked behind the curtains. Outside the window, there was nothing. That damned thing. Had it really left? He took a deep breath, quietly approached the window, and carefully pinched the curtains. I'll just take a look, just take a look. He told himself so. Then, he pulled up the corner of the curtains and took a look. He saw a happy eye filled with blood vessels. You're looking at me, right? The face outside the window that looked like a strange bird sneered. You're tuning into the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.